Well, a hospital porter's pride and dignity stopped the New World Order. Welcome to Panwo TV, and well, it's the night before the morning after. It's Monday, the 7th of November 2016, and it's about coming up to 9 PM, and in a few hours, well, in this part of the world anyway, it'll be Tuesday, the 8th of November 2016, the date of the US presidential election 2016, when the two candidates can battle each other for the White House. They've been battling each other for the White House for quite a long time now, and this process is almost at an end. This process, which has become one of the most contentious and unusual elections in American history, and no one knows who's going to win. In a way, it doesn't matter so much as a much more vital question: who is meant to win? That's the question, and that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to go through all this. I'm also going to play you a radio show interview I did. It's an illustrated radio interview I did the other week. I'm going to put it on, just like I did with Charmaine Fraser and Stephen Bassett. I'm going to do that in this programme. But anyway, I mean, it's a complicated business, because the United States of America is the country where this is taking place, and it's a big country, very big, the third biggest in the world in terms of both area and population. It's quite a new country, created 1776. So, as Alex Jones says, 1776, following the Revolution and independence, and in the process to elect the new president in this country is very, very complicated. It's more complicated than you get in Britain. So that's what I'm thinking about. Excuse me. Article 2 of the US Constitution is what decides. This is what it was established to do, because America has three branches of government: the executive branch, which is the president and which is the head of state and all his staff; the legislative branch, that's Congress; and the judiciary, the courts. The legislative branch, the Congress, is the equivalent of our Houses of Parliament, because we don't really have an executive branch here in England, in Britain. We have a head of government who's the Prime Minister, and he or she is simply the leader of the governing party in the House of Commons. Now, in the USA, they have an executive branch, and the leader is chosen separately in a separate election. And it's a republic. The USA is a republic, and the president fulfills the role of both the head of state and the head of government. In Britain, we don't elect a president. We have the Queen. We have it's a monarchy. We have the Queen. We have the reptile herself. Bless her green scaly ass. She's our head of state, and she's unelected, and she's always there, whether we like it or not. And also, it makes it more complicated, because the United States is a federation. It's not a singular state. There are 50 states, semi-independent, and they all vote for the president. They have their own independent government, semi-independent government, with they have a governor, and they have their own legislatures and senators. But they also have electors, federal electors in the US Electoral College. And these electors, they cast direct votes, which are called electoral votes, in the respective state capitals for the president and vice president, and each state casts as many electoral votes as the total number of senators and House representatives in Congress. And Washington DC has 3 votes, so there are 538 electors who decide together who will be the US president and the vice president. Article 2 just says that anyone can be president, as long as they're natural born citizens of the USA and at least 35 years old. And the election is always on November of the year, and then January the 20th is the inauguration day, when the new president is sworn in. So the parties nominate their candidates. The candidates go forward, and these take place throughout the year, and then the main presidential election goes ahead with the various nominations, and the final winners are the ones who are decided. Each party decides who's going to be the nominee in the primaries and caucuses, and they battle out for the voting day, which is tomorrow. And it's I don't know, is that clear to you? Does that make any sense? I hope so, because I don't quite understand it myself. It's a it's a really Byzantine system, and the complication in politics is often designed to launder duplicity, I find. That's what I've noticed in my studies of politics. Now, but one thing I have also learned about is that there's a lot of deception in politics, and I know that the system, I'll say more about this in a minute, but the system is designed to always have pro-establishment candidates as their as their chosen politicians to be elected as the nominations, which means that the only people you get to vote for in the end are people who are establishment candidates. So they're different masks on the same face, different puppets on the same hand, etc., etc. You know the score. And this is why I thought Donald Trump would never get very far. I said on January the 18th, this is what I wrote. I'll read it for you. Hillary Clinton is the chosen one. What we're going to see over the next few months is a sudden and inexplicable decline in the public appearance of Donald Trump. And by November, his very name will be virtually forgotten. Hillary will face some Republican non-entity like Rick Santorum or Ted Cruz, and she will walk over him with ease to become the first female president of the United States. Well, that didn't happen. On the 19th of March, I wrote, I said it's clear that Donald Trump is not going to be another Ron Paul. The Republican faithfuls have urged the electorate not to back Trump, and so it looks as if Donald Trump will be the Republican candidate for the presidential election. I don't see how they can stop him now. Sometimes their plans do not work out. This means they're not going to give up. Hillary's the chosen one. New tactics will need to be drawn up to put Hillary where she belongs. As a last resort, they can always do to Trump what they've done to many others. Trump could simply go for a walk in the woods. On June the 24th, I again predicted Trump's death. I said he would die in a plane crash. Probably that's the favourite method the Clintons use for getting rid of their enemies. Then again, he could have a heart attack or some other disease. 70 years old, he could easily fall off his perch. That didn't happen. And eventually it was all whittled down to just 2 candidates. And unbelievably, against what I predicted, sometimes I make predictions which come true, and sometimes I make predictions which don't. And in this case, my predictions didn't come true. And we were left with the 2 candidates I'm going to talk about now. So let's just have a look at the candidates we have in this particular election, because what a choice. What's on the menu, shall we see? Well, of course, Hillary Clinton, first of all. Let's go to her. Now, she's a former First Lady to Bill Clinton, of course, who was, for 8 years, was a 2-term president between 1992 and 2000. Or 2001, I think it's January 2001, yeah, they had the inauguration. But I remember even at the time, I remember thinking, she's acting like she's wearing the trousers in a relationship with Bill. So this is a symbol of the possibility that she was his handler, his CIA handler. It usually is the wife or girlfriend or boyfriend or husband who is the handler of the person who's targeted, who's the mind control victim. Now, Clinton, we've already seen, there's video footage which Chris Everard published of showing Bill Clinton just sitting there in a chair looking really dozed as if he's some kind of zombie. Which would mean that Hillary already has essentially been the president, but de facto, because she's controlling the mind of the guy in the White House who sits in the Oval Office. Now, this doesn't excuse Bill Clinton from anything he's done. It's just an explanation. There are exceptions, of course, like in the Manchurian Candidate film, which of course was fictional. But I remember it was the mother Still, it's usually, and there may be other examples. It's usually the spouse that is the handler. So Hillary Rodham, born 1947 on the 26th of October, so this was after Roswell. She was actually in the oven while Roswell was going on, and she trained as a lawyer. In 1973, this is very interesting, right? She is believed to have had an affair with Yoko Ono. She knew Yoko Ono and John Lennon. John Lennon was off with May Pang, the maid or employee that he had a brief fling with, and at the same time Yoko thought, what's good for the goose, no, rather, what's good for the gander is good for the goose. So she jumped into bed with Hillary Clinton. Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know if she's admitted to being like walking on both sides of the street. I don't know, but I think Hillary does. And there's more evidence for that as well, which I'll talk about in a minute. But now she trained as a lawyer, and she went to work for a law firm called Rose and something. I can't remember. But anyway, in 1975, she defended a man called Thomas Taylor, who's accused of raping 12-year-old Kathy Shelton. And Kathy Shelton is now a middle-aged lady and has suffered permanent injuries as a result of her attack, meaning she can't have children. Because Thomas Taylor didn't only rape Kathy Shelton, the 12-year-old girl, he beat her to within an inch of her life. Kicked the crap out of her. Okay, so Hillary, she's a junior partner in the law firm or a junior solicitor. If you're in that position, you have to take whatever case they give you. So you could say, well, Hillary was just doing her job. She's a lawyer. She has to defend this man in court. Everyone's entitled to a fair trial, even the most heinous criminal. So she was just doing her job by defending him. But the thing about it is, she was quite successful because she got his sentence greatly reduced. But she laughs about it. There's actually a recording of her laughing and gloating about the fact that she succeeded in getting this guy a reduced sentence. No regret. I mean, I'm sure any solicitor with a shred of humanity would feel regret at defending that man. They'd feel, well, I had to do it because it's my job, but I wouldn't want to defend someone who's that evil. But she doesn't. Now, in the same year, Hillary Clinton married Bill Clinton, who's Hillary Rodham became Hillary Clinton. He's an upcoming senator, and he's an upcoming politician in Arkansas. And she basically became very powerful because of her association with him, because he was very much a rising star in the world of politics. Hillary herself was, of course, no outsider of politics. She wasn't contentious to sit on the sidelines and bask in her husband's shadow. She became Senator of New York in 2000, one of two senators, the Class 1 ones, which are elected every 3 years rather than every 5 years. And in 2008 she ran for president and lost the nomination to Barack Obama, or Barry Soetoro to give him his proper name. But nevertheless, in 2009, Mr. Soetoro, aka Obama, appointed her Secretary of State, and she stepped down to run for president in 2016. And her tagline to begin with was, "I'm going to be the first woman president," which will be true if she's elected. The US has never had a female president, unless you count the time she was controlling Bill Clinton's brain. Now, she had to drop that line, though, because it turns out that women preferred Bernie Sanders, and since Bernie's gone, they seem to be quite divided over Hillary and Trump. There's many reasons why I think women will be drawn to Trump, which I'll talk about in a minute. But Hillary had to drop that line. Now, on September the 11th, that date again, 2012, the US diplomatic mission in Benghazi, Libya, was attacked, and this resulted in the deaths of US Ambassador Christopher Stevens and 3 other Americans. Now, it was only in October 2015 that Hillary Clinton admitted responsibility. The leaked emails show that she covered it up. She tried to get herself off the hook. But she's liable because she's Secretary of State, and the US Foreign Service is a part of the State Department. So she was his boss. Therefore, she was liable. Hillary is one of the most pro-war US politicians in the modern world. It's far more so than George W. Bush. She was pretty much the mastermind of the the proxy civil war in Libya and the death of Colonel Gaddafi. Colonel Gaddafi was a popular, but he was an absolute dictator, but he was a popular leader who was popular with his, who was well loved by his people. He gave Libya had the highest standard of living of any African country, and he was on the verge of actually making it water independent because he was going to tap the aquifers underneath the Sahara Desert, and he was going to bring. This is what really I think sealed his fate. He was going to bring in a new Bank of Africa, which would be gold standard, which meant it would not be linked to the international banking system. And it would not be issuing fiat currency. That I think sealed his fate. And Hillary Clinton laughed, like she did with Thomas Taylor. She laughed. She says, "We came, he saw, he died." He did die. I mean, he died an ignoble death. He was captured by a lynch mob and basically beaten to death. They kicked the crap out of him in the street. They then mutilated his body with knives, and he was killed in the most undignified way. Now, her involvement in Bill Clinton's alleged sexual impropriety is very worrying. We all know about Monica Lewinsky, don't we? Monica Lewinsky, there's a young assistant who Clinton did various things with in the Oval Office. I don't give a damn about that. Now, that's incredibly famous, but I don't give a damn about that because Monica Lewinsky was a consenting adult, whereas many other women, 21 is the latest count, have accused Bill Clinton of various levels of sexual impropriety, everything from groping and harassment to full rape. And Hillary, basically through various means, covered it up, prevented these prosecutions from going ahead when the police believed they had evidence. And it gets worse. It gets much, much worse. In the early 90s, a book was written called Transformation of America by Cathy O'Brien. It's a conspiratorial classic. Now, in this book, Cathy O'Brien reveals that she was a mind-controlled slave and her daughter was as well. They're used for various things, including drug running, mostly for sex. She was essentially a mind-controlled prostitute. Now, in that book, she accuses over 130 people. None of them have ever taken legal action. And one of those people is Hillary Clinton. We've heard about Hillary Clinton covering up her husband's sexual impropriety, but she herself has committed acts of sexual impropriety, according to this book, including the sexual abuse of Cathy and her young daughter, who was about 8, I think. Horrific crimes. Now, Hillary Clinton has a lot of money, and she is, of course, a trained lawyer. Yet, why hasn't she sued? She could give Cathy O'Brien her day in court and have that book shut down forever. But she never has. The book is still available now. It's an underground bestseller. Why doesn't Hillary Clinton try to shut her up? Why do none of the people accused in that book try and shut it up? That if Cathy O'Brien is lying, then it's an act of gross libel. But no one sues her. No one will give her her day in court, stand up there and have a say on the official record. Now, Hillary is a one-worlder. She's a globalist, she's a mondialist, and she's a New World Order hack. Total New World Order hack. She wants to create something called the Hemispherical Alliance, and she's a darling of the neoconservative movement. Isn't that strange, right? The neocons, of course, used to be Republicans. They supported George W. Bush in his wars. Now, suddenly they're Democrats and they support Hillary. And a lot of them have spoken out an awful lot about Trump, so it's really, really strange. Funny how allegiances are so flexible and so utilitarian. It says a lot, doesn't it? And her rival is this guy, Donald J. Trump. Now then, this is the guy that Stephen Bassett wouldn't talk about, if you remember my last video my video on the WikiLeaks UFO issue. Now, Donald Trump was born in June 14th, 1946, so he was sort of like he was over a year old when Roswell took place, and I'm obsessed with Roswell, aren't I? I judge everything BR and AR, before Roswell, after Roswell. That's my dating system. That's my year zero date. Anyway, he's a native of New York City, businessman who is the proprietor of the Trump Organization, which he's built up over his lifetime. He's been doing this his whole life. He started off in the world of estate agents, and he moved into hotels, leisure, golf courses, etc. And today he's worth over $3.7 billion. That's US dollars. I don't know what that is in pounds, but that's an awful lot of money. And he's not. It's only recently he's become well known outside his own country. He's was pretty much unknown until he ran for president. But he's a TV personality as well. He became quite well known as a celebrity in America over the last few years. And of course, in America, showbiz and politics have always been very, very closely linked. I mean, Ronald Reagan was an actor, things like that. So it's not unusual for a famous person to get into politics, and it doesn't often happen here. And he was in this thing called The Apprentice. He played a sort of like rough guy. He was the equivalent of Alan Sugar in America's version of The Apprentice. And of course, as you know, reality TV shows are repeated all over the world in various forms. But he also ran Miss USA. He was into beauty queens and things like that, which meant the feminists loved him, didn't they? They absolutely adored him. Now he's famous for, he's not said to be a likable man. He's very brash. His personality is very brash. He can be aggressive, arrogant. He's a sort of guy some people might get fed up with. He's also, of course, like he brags. There's that tape of him. It's interesting, you know. The closest they could come to smearing him was a tape from one of his reality TV shows, 11 years old, where he's on a coach, bragging about grabbing women's pussies, which is in America is. We're not talking cats here, guys, and of course he was in the company of other men. I mean, then later in the scene, he meets a woman. He's very polite to her, and that's kind of like one. But I'll say more about that later when I get Nile on. But he's a typical rich old playboy, really. You know, I mean, he is. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you are extremely wealthy, and you can actually be attracted to women in circumstances when you wouldn't be otherwise. Now, he's had 3 wives, which is not much for someone like him. I mean, he's only 70 years old, for goodness sake. Surely he could slip in a 4th wife before he goes. Oh. Anyway, his first wife he was married to for about 20 years. She was called Ivana. And then he married another woman. For a few years he was with Marla. His current wife is Melania, and they're all at least 20 years younger than him. They're all very slim and model-like and conventionally pretty. But I think what's most interesting about Trump is he's from a very different background to Clinton. Unlike her, who's a career politician, he's never been a politician. This is actually, he's one of only 3 other US presidential candidates who have never been elected to public office. In other words, the US president is the first political office he's running for. And that's very unusual in this day and age. So, very different to Hillary, I'd say. Very different guy. He's not connected, and we're going to talk about later about how he seems to be unconnected to the usual power structures that Hillary is. He's very rich, but rich doesn't necessarily mean initiated. I know it's a lot of people get this working class paranoia. You know, all rich people are bastards. If they're wealthy, it must be because they're crooks. Not necessarily. Trump, I mean, just whatever his personality flaws, I mean, he does seem to have built up his business empire through legitimate means. And I might be wrong there. People say you don't do business in New York without the permission of the mafia. I mean, maybe that's true. I mean, like I said, it's only what I can see on the surface. But at any rate, he's a very different from Clinton in that respect. Very different indeed. Now, I think it's worth mentioning something else. That a guy who was the original 3rd candidate in this election, he dropped out towards the end, and it's actually a very, very sad story. This is chap, Bernie Sanders. Now, Bernie Sanders is what Americans would call a radical liberal, well, we would call him as a socialist, a leftist. And he has supported leftist causes his own life. He was an advocate for civil rights, and that includes black people, as Xylomet has corrected me over that. It's not black rights, it's civil rights. But he was a colleague of Dr. Martin Luther King. He supported feminism. He still supports feminism, LGBT rights, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. Universal public health care, which is something we're losing in Britain right now. And an interesting bit of trivia is that I know his brother. His brother is called Larry Sanders. Dr. Larry Sanders lives here in Oxford, and he's a Green Party councillor. And his son Jacob Sanders is also a Green Party councillor, and he's on the council right now. Now, Larry, actually, I met him when I was involved in the trade unions at the hospital, which I've always been a trade union member, but I was passionately involved for a short time, luckily a very short time, because it was a big mistake. But he's a likeable chap, a gentle Jewish grandfather type of bloke, like his brother Bernie. Academic, I think he was, Larry, and he's now in the Green Party. He's still active in the Green Party. I went to school with his daughter as well, and if I recall correctly, she was rather less amiable, to put it mildly. I think obnoxious, stuck-up little bitch is several of the words I've used to describe her. But that's an incident. She doesn't come into this story, even though she's the niece of Bernie. Now Bernie won a lot of hearts and minds. People who wouldn't normally support a leftist ended up supporting Bernie. Feel the burn, Bernie bros, things like that they used to say. And in fact, I was surprised how similar he is to Donald Trump, in a sense that his supporters acted as if they were dealing with a real human being with feelings like their own. Now, the Hillary supporters don't do that. This is a man they can look up to and relate to, whereas Hillary supporters seem to be very half-hearted about their support. They're voting for her simply because they feel they have no other choice. And he was obviously heartfelt. That's one of the things I liked about Bernie Sanders. I mean, in a sense, it's the same thing I like about Trump. He's obviously in this business for ideological reasons. This is why I warm to Jeremy Corbyn. You know, he's not like most politicians in that sense. And he carried out these very passionate, heartfelt, and sincere attacks against the old wicked witch of the White House, Hillary Clinton, and he said things like, talk about the worst foreign policy mindset in the modern history of our country. I led the opposition to it. Secretary Clinton voted for it. She's not qualified to be president. She gets $15 million from Wall Street. And I get the feeling that Bernie Sanders was not just going through the motions. He was not just reciting scripts. He meant it. And then, and as I said, I mean, he walks the walk. I mean, he did march with Martin Luther King in the days when, you know, there was King was like very sincere. He wasn't like Black Lives Matter. He was like calm and respectful to other people, and he would march against police batons, riot shields. Bernie Sanders was at his side. But then he went and endorsed Hillary Clinton at the end of it all. And that's just unbelievable. The old fool, honestly. I mean, I still don't know why he did that. I mean, it's his excuses are pathetic, and his supporters felt let down. In a sense, this was kind of love bombing them into cynicism. And it gets worse. I mean, it's been revealed since then that Hillary was saying horrible things in these emails behind his back. She was saying really nasty things about him, showing she really hated him, and she manipulated the system to get Bernie Sanders out. And you know, she's basically cheated, as I suspect she's gonna try and do again in this election tomorrow. So you know, I think Bernie Sanders is a bit of a mug, quite frankly, and but he was someone I liked. I don't agree with a lot of what he stands for. I mean, I'm not a socialist like he is, but I've got to the point where I just, politics has reached the point where almost any politician who gives a piece of excrement about anything and has a heart and a soul and a pair of balls to match and a brain and principles, I find myself warming to, no matter what their political position is. Because you think of all the gutless, soulless suckers of Satan's, you know what, that politics seems to consist of nowadays. And politicians are some of the most, despicable individuals imaginable. I mean, we live in a free country, supposedly. Democracy is supposed to be the ideal form of government, right? We're told that, aren't we? We're told, oh, democracy, oh, democracy, oh, democracy, oh, democracy. Just raise your cigarette lighter in the air. I mean, this is a perennial question, isn't it? In a world where we can supposedly choose our rulers, why do we never end up with rulers we absolutely like? We actually like at all. Democracy, this evocative word, is loaded with this emotional cultural baggage. Wars have been fought over democracy that have cost the lives of millions. Some people start weeping the very moment you mention the word. My granddaddy died for democracy. And democracy, the quest for democracy has produced some very dramatic tales in history. The Chartists, the suffragettes, Nelson Mandela, etc., etc. We're told it's the ideal form of government, but most democratic countries, even the oldest democratic countries like Britain, which is one of them, there's obviously a terrible malaise going on. Which they are suffering from. They have a massive credibility problem, these governments. Their relationship with their citizens is terrible. Some political leaders have approval ratings in single figures. And cynicism is endemic. Electoral turnout was always low. And as we've seen, citizens will mostly vote for negative reasons instead of positive. They'll vote in order to keep somebody they don't like out of office, rather than electing someone they do. They'll vote for a candidate they dislike less, not someone they like. And democratic countries, as I said, are ruled by some of the most loathsome people imaginable. They're almost all, to a man or woman, cruel, stupid, selfish, weak, cowardly, corrupt, immoral, amoral. So, why is it in a system where we can nominally choose our leaders, do these kinds of people always rise to the top, and no one seems to know why, let alone how to stop them? And this is the underlying issue I think about when I talk about this election. This is why this election seems to be unusual, because we do have characters who seem to have overcome that somehow. And Bernie Sanders is actually very similar to Donald Trump in that respect. He's a lot more like Donald Trump than he is Hillary Clinton, although he'd hate to hear me say that. So that's why this is unusual. Very unusual indeed.
So there you have it. Those are our choices, and unusually, and I'll say more about this later, it seems as if just for once the voters do have a genuine choice. I don't think they've been given that choice. It seems to have been forced on them. Now this is a very, very unusual situation. I've never seen this before in politics. Never. This is unique. Certainly within my lifetime, this has never happened before. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss it with somebody. Now, I did Panmo Radio last week, and I did a special on the American election. So I've decided to play you the interview I did, because the interview, I've done this before with Charmaine Fraser and Stephen Bassett, and I'm going to do it again because I think it's very, very important. What we talked about is very important and very relevant. Now, the guy you're going to hear me talking to on the Panmo Radio show is called Nile Murphy. Now, he's a musician, and he researches the spiritual, the political, economic, and he's a radio show host too. He has a show called Shamanic Freedom Radio. Do please check that out, because it's very, very good. Now, there's a link in the description box of the entire show I did with Nile, and you can actually follow the links in the description box to the Shamanic Freedom Radio website and things like that. And he's done his own show on the US presidential election. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you find it interesting. I know that the Panmo Radio listeners did, and so I hope you will too.
How are you?
All right there, Ben. Yeah, how about yourself?
I'm fine, thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got Nile Murphy back on the programme again. He was back previously in programme 198, which is just back in August, where we talked about Brexit and the referendum to get Britain out of the European Union, and we're back again because there's another political issue going on at the moment in the United States of America, which it's quite similar in many ways. And I know you've covered this on your own show, but what's your feelings about the U.S. presidential election?
This is one of the most entertaining farces I've seen in a long time, I think. And I mean, with Trump, as I've been trying to think long term, not suffer from having a short term memory like a lot of people do. I remember in his early days he was talking tough, and I think he's some sort of a strategic trickster who's been trying to outmaneuver the media and actually play them at their game of destabilised perception management, if you like. I think he's doing that because he's gone from apparently using the language of the far right or the extreme right to then using the language of the Occupy movement to then using the language of the alt-right and the alternative communities, if you like. So that way the media are finding it very difficult to know how to put him into a box. And I think he's done this deliberately, strategically. I even think when he got his wife to copy Michelle Obama's speech, I think that was a social experiment to demonstrate how you can say the same thing but be taken the wrong way because you're someone else. I think that he's a very clever man, and because he owns TV production companies, I think he's been doing some reverse engineering of their perception management, and they have been falling for it. So, yeah, I kind of think of Donald Trump as a kind of a necessary trickster to come along at the right time. But there is one thing that I'm a little bit concerned about. I might have to unfold this because it's a bit of a big subject.
Sure.
But what I was saying is, when I look back over time, people have said, and I mentioned this in my previous narrative, that people would get a lot of the David Icke narratives and they would see anything that would come along that would fit it. And even if it turns out that it's not what David Icke prophesied, if it fits the narrative, they automatically will just say that it is that thing. I mean, Bitcoin's a good example because it fits the narrative of a cashless society. Therefore, it must be a conspiracy, despite the fact that none of these people have looked into how it will make banks and governments obsolete in the control of money. So these same people then followed Russell Brand religiously. These same people are following Hillary Clinton because she's going to bring in this feminist paradise for women while thinking that Donald Trump is Hitler. And this is what I think of a good example of people who are influenced somewhat by the alternative media, but they're not thinking critically or discerningly enough about stuff.
Well, that's something you raised some points there I wasn't really aware of before. I mean, Trump, being what was it you called Trump? A
trickster. That's what I kind of think.
Yeah, and he was engaged in perception management or something. What was it?
I think he's reverse engineering or actually playing tricks on. He knows that the media is doing this. He knows that there's propaganda. He knows there's rigging. He knows there's all sorts of stuff. And I think because he's been changing his narrative and his stance so much, I think he's deliberately trying to outthink them and demonstrate that he knows how they work and he can work better at basically playing their game against them. That's what I think he's been doing.
Well, he's certainly doing a good job. I mean, the thing about this whole election is, and this is why I'm finding politics so interesting this year, in a way it's never been before. I mean, we had Brexit and now we got this, and it's like, it's just, I've never known these things happen in the politics before. I mean, this is where I part company with a lot of the conspiratorial world, which I am a part. I like David Icke. I've watched David Icke. When David has stuck to the line that this is just another election, and these both parties are controlled. They are both puppets being controlled by the same source, and that's all that's going on. There's nothing more. Now, I've looked into this, and I disagree. And
so do I.
And I disagree with a lot of the people in the conspiracy who's taken David's line. Oh, it's not just his line; it's a lot of people's lines, and said, and they've done. I've got exactly the same things I got over Brexit. Ben, you're a sheeple if you believe that. This is just another layer of the mind control. And you're a shill and a sheeple if you believe it. I'm not going to explain why you're a shill and a sheeple, but I'm going to call you a shill and a sheeple in a very loud voice. So I don't need to explain why. And that's what I get,
I'd say there's so many shills about that, in reality, that MI6 building on Vauxhall Bridge, They should have buildings covering all the way from the Thames along from Surrey to Essex. There's so many shills, you know.
I know, but there's certain people in the community who've taken it upon themselves to round us all up. So, no doubt, my name's been mentioned on a few websites, But the thing about Trump is this is why I think this is a different election. Hillary Clinton is completely and utterly a corporate-controlled clone, just as much as her husband was. They're the Clinton Foundation, and the list of sponsors of the Clinton Foundation. I'll just give you an example of the kind of people who are actually supporting it: J.P. Morgan and Chase, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Time Warner, Microsoft. Oh, bloody!
Google's parent company.
Yes, they're all behind her. They've donated massive amounts of money. She's had a lot of money from abroad, which I think is against the rules of the election. So that's never stopped her before.
No.
Saudi
Don't
Arabia.
forget George Soros as well. You know.
Yes, now he's a key player in this. I want to talk to you a bit more about this because this comes into the electoral fraud angle, which I want to bring up with you. But there's one called Alphabet Inc. Now that's a very interesting company because apparently it runs. Well, I think does Time Warner own Disney now? I think I'm not sure, but Alphabet Inc. I think owns Fox or something like that. But these basically she's a completely connected corporate clone, a corporate entity, a corporate yes person, absolutely down the line. She is like she's their perfect leader. She's the Tony Blair of America, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if Donald Trump, you see, Donald Trump was selected by the Republican Party in a popular uprising against the establishment of the GOP. Now there are some connected puppet leaders they were going to put up, people like Ted Cruz and that, who are very, very, very much like Clinton.
Yeah.
If Hillary had actually been up against one of those guys, I'd agree with David and all the others. I'd have said, yes, this is just another controlled election. You've got two. There's Punch and Judy. You're on the hands of the same puppeteer. But the thing about Donald Trump is, firstly, Donald Trump has never been a politician before. He's not only is he not a career politician, but this particular election, U.S. president, is the first public office he's ever run for.
Yeah.
He's also financed his own campaign.
Yeah.
Because he's very rich, of course, he can afford to. He's one of the few people who can actually afford the massive amount of money. I mean, Saudi Arabia has given Hillary Clinton, the Saudi royal family, this horrible, aren't they some sort of women's rights organisation? Because Hillary, the feminist, loves them so much. But Saudi Arabia has donated 125 million to her campaign. Trump has he's funded it all himself. Hillary is the media is now so ridiculously biased in favour of Hillary that it's just the chasm between what is going on in the world and what the media is telling us is so wide. You'd have to be a complete dullard not to notice it, and more and more people are noticing and are noticing this.
Yeah. There's also I've got to say that when it comes to the racist and sexist slurs, right?
Yeah. I
saw something on their Facebook yesterday where they got a picture of him apparently embracing a young girl and saying that he was a pervert and a paedophile. That young girl happened to be his daughter when she was 14.
Oh dear! I mean,
that's how they're scraping the barrel, and they're talking about him being racist. Now, I heard this from a reliable source, but I would ask the listener to check just to make sure. But as far as I know, Donald Trump was the first American to actually, to bring black people onto his golf courses. So it could be argued, therefore, that Tiger Woods has got Donald Trump to thank for his bit in the Ryder Cup. So how's a racist going to do that?
Yeah, I mean, racist is just a slur that's used against everybody nowadays. I've been called a racist. It's basically it's lost its meaning. I mean, Tim Burton, the film director, is a racist apparently. Yeah, I mean, it's a word that's completely lost its meaning through overuse and misuse.
Yeah.
It's just become really a nonsense word. As for the sexist thing, I mean, Trump was recorded. He was an outtake for a reality TV show, and he was just bantering with this other bloke on the coach, talking about grabbing women by their pussies and things like that.
I've got a good theory I could talk to you about.
Sure.
And Well, imagine that. I mean, imagine that we're famous rock stars or billionaire entrepreneurs for a start, right? Whatever we look like, however we look physically to women, if you like. It's not the same as if we were women. Basically, status comes a lot into it. The richer and more powerful, more influential you are as a man, the more groupies you're going to get. And Donald Trump was actually speaking factually correct there, because he was in a position where he had a lot of groupies around him, and he was just stating the obvious that if you are that rich and that powerful, I mean, doesn't apply just to Donald Trump, but also like to Rod Stewart in the 1970s and to the Beatles even, that you do get to a certain stage and there are these gold digger women out there, groupies, and if you are one of these blokes, you can grab them by the pussy because they're drawn to you by their groupiedom. Yeah. He wasn't talking about all women, and you certainly wouldn't get a chance with women like that if you're poor or you're struggling as a man, no matter how good looking you are. And this is the point that is really obvious to make. He did not actually do it. He was talking about it, and that was about as far as it went.
Exactly. And he was in the company of a couple of other guys. I mean, he would never speak like this in front of a lady. In fact, in the same shot, he's seen getting off the coach, and he greets this female producer or something, and he's very polite to her.
Yeah.
This is something all blokes do. I mean, and I'm sure women do the same thing when women are on their own together. And
they're worse.
Having been working in a female-dominated profession when I was at the hospital, well, not portering, but the hospital in general, I can say that's absolutely true. And it's a rather cheap shot, and it backfired quite badly because it's actually made him more popular with the female voters, apparently. And with much voters generally. I mean, there's women walking around with arrows pointing downwards on t-shirts with arrows pointing downwards, saying, "Donald, grab my pussy." We're not talking about cats here for anyone who's not American. You've already guessed what we're talking about. But to me, Trump, you see, this is a funny thing because Hillary, when she started out on her campaign, she was trying to get the woman vote. She was trying to get the women on her side, saying, "I support women. I love women. I'm a feminist," and things like that. And most women actually preferred Bernie Sanders. That they seem to gravitate towards, especially younger women preferred Bernie Sanders. Even the feminists preferred Bernie Sanders. Since then, Hillary hasn't managed to get the woman vote, the women's to vote for her, the female vote. And Trump, you see, what draws women to Trump is he is. You're right about a rich, successful guy. Of course, he's going to be more attractive, and like this is why Peter Stringfellow can still surround himself with bikini-clad babes at the age of 84 or whatever he is. It is a fact of life. I mean, whereas you and me, if I live to be that old, I don't think babes, bikini clad or otherwise, will probably come within a mile of me.
That's true. We just have to become rich between now and then, really.
Oh, well, you never know. Know. Come on, Don, give me some money. But that's an important point. So it's a really cheap shot, and in fact, Trump's masculinity is actually something that appeals to a lot of women because male politicians generally tend to be quite effeminate. I mean. Look at Blair talking about, oh yes, we want to do this for the Iraqi people, And they tend to be like that, whereas Trump is unashamedly masculine in a world where masculinity is not really encouraged, especially in politics.
Yeah. Well, political correctness has had a lot to do with this, and I wonder about the estrogen in the water as well.
Oh, yeah.
This is the thing. What bothers me really is that when I was younger, like back in the 80s, I wasn't the hardest kid in the school. I was probably quite effeminate compared to a lot of the other boys, if you like. But as I've got older, I've become, I suppose, moderately masculine. Not I'm certainly no mangina. There's no doubt. I'm certainly not that. But I just look round at the next generation these days that replaced me from 30 years ago. And it's quite normal for them to be more effeminate and more skinny and lacking in testosterone than even I was then. And it is quite worrying because I don't know whether it's epigenetics, I don't know whether it's political correctness influence, I don't know whether it's estrogen in the water, but something has happened to men in the last 30 years, and Western men in particular. Not happened everywhere in the world. It's not like that in Eastern Europe, for a start. And it's not like that in a lot of other non-white countries. But here in England in particular, and America, there's this feminisation of men, and whatever is causing it, it's really, really obvious. And there's these dictatorial female supremacists, as I like to call them, because I honestly think it's a perversion of language to call them feminists. And I think what's her name, Emmeline Pankhurst, would be spinning in her grave if she knew where it had gone these days.
I know. I've seen the social justice warriors, screaming, hurling abuse at a college professor, for using a word like mankind, or wearing
using the wrong pronouns
yeah.
when it comes to gender-confused, identity crisis-stricken adolescents.
Cool. So that brings us back to the Hillary Clinton paradox, because none of these SJWs are interested in, for instance, picketing outside the embassy of Saudi Arabia, which would be the first thing I would do when it comes to the women's rights issues. That is your top priority. And then, of course, that's the answer is that Hillary Clinton, of course, is being bankrolled by this this awful regime that actually keeps 30 million women in abject slavery. And actually, you can be executed. You can be beheaded, male or female, but especially if you're a female, for doing something that's maybe it's not even considered a crime in our society, like cheating on your husband. You can actually have your head cut off. And
that's true.
It's this is the level to which reality has diverged from conformity. And I'm going back to Trump. I mean, this is where we come to the media as well, because as I said, the media is so blatantly on the side of Hillary Clinton. It's just unbelievable. I mean, they're still convinced that the opinion polls have finally had to admit that. I think it'd be stupid to just pretend she was ahead in the polls now. But the latest are, Trump and Hillary Clinton neck and neck.
I saw that, yeah.
Which
kind of means he's 50 points ahead, really.
Yeah, I mean, this is the way it's been throughout the whole time. And Trump, you see, Trump's entire campaign has not only been self-funded, it's been self-publicised using his social media network.
Yeah, I think also as well as that,
mouth.
He knows. He seems to be aware that the mainstream media in its traditional form is becoming an anachronism. It's becoming, if you like, the equivalent of cultural obsolete software, and that social media and the internet is the way forward. Whereas the corporate classes, the traditional people like Hillary Clinton and all that, are still kind of stuck in the 1980s for the way they're trying to manage our perception. I honestly think that we're living in a world now where everything that we're being used, whether it be from fiat currency to whether it's the media itself, the corporate machine, is actually obsolete. It's 30 years out of date in the way that it is ideologically. Yeah. And I kind of see Donald Trump as a kind of a new paradigmer who's come along and he knows this. And so he's not really, giving any lip service to the media itself. He's just using, the internet instead. And I think this is the direction that everything is going in. And it's a complete turnaround. Also, what you're saying about David Icke, I was thinking about David Icke, because, I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful to the man because, he was one of the early pioneers of a lot of this.
He was. Very influential in me.
Yeah, but what it is that, like, one of the things that he always said was, don't take my word for it, right? So, we've got to exercise our right to not take David Icke's word for it. And it's not disrespectful because, he's given us permission to disagree with him. Yeah. And so I personally think that he is very stuck in his narrative. He's very set in his ways, I think, in the way that he thinks. I mean, maybe it's because he's getting old and he's been doing this for so long. That I am a bit worried that if we just think that everything is controlled, everyone's a puppet, that the so-called Illuminati are omnipotent and omniscient and all-powerful and infallible, then we might as well just sit back and let them walk all over us, because then there's no way of us fighting them, and there's no way of them coming down. But long-term history has always shown that big changes, big bangs, if you like, keep happening time after time. Like the end of World War II was a big bang in history, because it really did look to a lot of people like the Nazis were going to end up controlling the whole world, and it was inconceivable that Britain and America would win that war. So there's that. At the end of the Cold War, I mean, we're old enough to remember that. It honestly looked like nuclear war was around the corner. We was never going to get rid of the so-called Red Menace or the Iron Curtain. And then one day, bang, it's gone. And then we end up in this world of unipolar gangster corporate capitalism that we're in now. And somehow this narrative has got into the alternative media that it's omnipotent, omniscient, never-ending, won't stop, everyone's a puppet, there's nothing you can do about it. And and then a wild card like Trump comes along. Now, I mean, I was more skeptical about Russell Brand than I am about Donald Trump.
Yeah, me too.
And this massive balkanisation, this chasm has opened that has caused a dividing line in the alternative community. And it's shaking up the pieces. And in a way, this is a good thing, I think.
Oh, totally, absolutely, totally. And I mean, I know what you mean about the conspiratorial line, and it's in some realms of politics as well, like in the anti-capitalist movements and things like that. But the defeatism I sometimes hear from people in the conspiratorial world is really, I think it's a very serious problem, because certain people, I think, are vulnerable enough to be drawn into genuine despair.
Yeah.
As a result of it. I mean, we had a listen to this in the CMR days. One of the guys who listened to my show and listened to several others committed suicide.
Oh.
And I did go through that. Was it something I said kind of feel about it? I didn't know. I mean, he appeared in the chat box occasionally. I found out that he committed suicide. It was absolutely devastating. But there are people who will. There are people who just don't see any way out and accept to take their own life because things are so bad they just don't want to live anymore. Mike Rupert, who was a brilliant researcher I really liked, I didn't agree with him on everything, and I think a lot of the things he got wrong I think might have driven him to despair, but he shot himself. He did his last show and he went and shot himself, and it was suicide. People say he was murdered. No, it was suicide, and it's. And when you say, well, they
getting Rick Clay as well back in the day.
Oh God, yeah, poor Rick Clay, yeah. When people hear the message is nothing, they're so powerful that they control every electoral candidate. If it looks like they don't control them, well, that's just because they're very crafty, and it means they do control them. Really, it doesn't matter how much evidence you put forward to say no. This time it's different, and you be as rational as you like. There's some wise guy will still say, "But Ben, you don't want to you're not a sheeple who really believes that, do you?" And the fact of the matter is, I'd like to ask these people, if you think the Illuminati are that powerful and they control everything to that degree, why has it taken them this long? Why has it taken them, 10,000 years to take over?
Yeah, and they still haven't reached the end game yet.
No, that's it. And in fact, if you think about it, if this is the point I made in the article I've written about this issue, if it turns out that in an Illuminati-occupied country, a candidate for head of government actually reaches the point that he does, against all, when he's not meant to be there, especially if it's the United States, which is still the principal centre of operations for the Illuminati, it means something's gone very, very badly wrong with their machinations. There must be a major spanner in the works somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I think, all you have to do is look post 9/11. They've made a right pig's ear out of the Middle East.
God, yeah.
They haven't. And also, did you see that documentary recently by I forget his name, Adam Curtis?
Yes.
The hypernormalization.
Yes, brilliant.
And I liked it. I mean, all right, a lot of his narratives were a little bit more based on the official version than on the conspiracy version. But I suppose that's the only way that he could get that put on the BBC. So fair enough. But what he pointed out was that a lot of these people were utopian idealists, and they believed that. Because it worked in Eastern Europe, it's never worked since, that if you depose a leader, the rest of the people will organise democracy. I put this as just that they're so out of touch with reality because they're in their ivory towers that they really naively believe this to be true. And they believe themselves to be benevolent when they're trying to do this. But and then it doesn't work, so they try again, it doesn't work, they try again, it doesn't work. But it's so ossified in their heads that this is scientific method that they're playing with. But in the process of trying to bring this democracy to the Middle East, they've just created a lot of competing gangster and mercenary organisations, and they really have got no control over it whatsoever. Now, I don't think that they would want to go out their way to completely decimate part of the world in the way they have done. To me, that looks more like cock-up than conspiracy. Now that I've kind of decided to reclaim my own mind from both the mainstream and the alternative, have another look at it from another lens, that really does seem to me like cock-up to me,
Yeah, that's it. I know the program you're talking about. Absolutely fascinating. Totally fascinating.
Yeah.
Big fan of Adam Curtis. I think The Trap was his best program. He's done things like Power of Nightmares, which is great. Now, hypernormalization, I felt was meant to say more. I got kind of a feeling that there was some edits, some last-minute edits made to that program in late post-production. I mean, there's a very abrupt change of pace near the end, which is not characteristic of his style. So I wonder if maybe he was going to say something else, perhaps about the true nature of the Islamic State and where it came from and who funds it and things like that. So,
Yeah.
so that's where I wonder if that's where I do wonder if it was edited. But I think that there is an element of control. I do believe that they're not so unknowing in what they're doing that they would mess up to that extent, though. No, I mean, I think that's where Curtis does get it wrong. Because he says things, he sort of acts like he portrays the elite as sort of bumbling fools almost, who are stabbing around in the dark, just trying to maintain those things from their own perspective, with no real narrative, no real agenda, no real long-term objectives. Now, on one level, there's certainly individuals within government who are like that. I mean, look at Boris Johnson. I mean, he doesn't know where he's going now, does he? But but I think that the big mistake he makes is a lot of it is deliberate.
Well, I think that the truth is somewhere in the middle between his narrative and the conspiracy narrative. I think that it's so complex and it's so difficult for us to to get into perspective. You see, he might have portrayed it as them being a bunch of bumbling fools, but at the same time, the conspiracy or the alternative media tends to make them out to be a bunch of flawlessly precise strategists.
Yeah.
I don't think they're that either. I think the truth is that a lot of their strategies are precise, but they bumble and mess up a lot along the way. Because I mean, the state that the world is in at the moment, it doesn't seem to be. It couldn't be like that completely by design. I mean, there are a lot of people who think that it is. I think a lot of stuff is by design, but I do think there have been a few major cock-ups and a lot of major setbacks along the way. And the reason why I think this is because if you take it from the perspective of a working class person who's streetwise, who knows how things work in their own area, and a public school boy comes into that area, he's going to be outwitted at every possible opportunity. Just by the very nature of the fact that he's going to be so out of touch, he's not really going to know how to protect himself amongst the street protocols of the people in that area. He's going to have to go in with an army. He's going to have to get a bunch of dividers and spin doctors, and they're not going to be the easiest of people to convince. And also, if you do look throughout history, because we're not really looking back at history, the fights and the conflicts and the way countries have been liberated and controlled and taken over, the history of the British Empire, say for instance, the struggle that Ireland had, eventually got Britain out of America, out of Ireland. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. The American colonies, 1776, how they actually got rid of the empire, the British Empire at the time. If the conspiracy narratives that we're living in now were so accurate, then all of these liberations would not have been possible. Now, it could be argued that the banking classes have since infiltrated and the secret societies have infiltrated these countries as time goes on, but that's just the very nature of how things work, because there's never an end game and there's always something new coming. But the fact is that if we think that they're so precise in their control, they're so omnipotent, they're so omniscient, then we basically have resigned to the fact that we have lost and there's nothing that we can do, and we might as well just let the New World Order just come along because there's nothing we can do because we're powerless. And that is a really dangerous, I think, way to think. And if people are dismissing this election in America like that now, to say that, I mean, I remember David Icke saying that it doesn't matter that Trump has not been financed by all these corporations. He's still his money is still all in the bank. And I thought that was quite a naive statement to make, because any businessman would not put their money in the bank. They put some of it on gold, they put some on derivatives, they put some on stocks and shares. They diversify where their money is so that it wasn't too much in the control of one set of elites. And that's what you would do if you were a billionaire. So I'd imagine that Donald Trump has got quite a lot of gold reserves and silver reserves, as well as having some of his money in the bank. So I'd imagine that his portfolio is far too diversified for any one person to be able to say, right, we're going to stop your money here or stop your money there, because he'll only lose about 2% of his income. So I honestly think that being that be the case, and being as he's put his hand in his pocket, took 10% of his entire wealth and is funding his own campaign, I think it's quite obvious that, if he's not completely genuine, if he's not completely unflawed, so to speak, it's certainly a far cry from how it's usually done. There's, and you look at the mainstream media in America and how desperate they have been so far to get Hillary in. They're willing to turn a blind eye to some of the most unspeakable, malevolent, shit that she has brought in the world, and the way that they are, making mountains out of molehills with just comments that he said. I mean, we've never seen the media expose itself in such a transparent way with its biases in a way that's so insulting to everyone's intelligence. This is a new level of that.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. It's they don't control everything. That's true, and I mean you're right about the despair problem, as we were saying. Do you want to say? I mean, things they're very crafty. It's riding waves and surfing along various public perceptions and public movements. For instance, I mean, the American Revolution, for example, there were so many people who really did want America to be did want the United States, and of course no one can ever say that every single person involved in the American Revolution was part of a plot to just change the name of the Virginia Company to the United States government. Of course they weren't, and there were those within it, though, I think, who did manage to achieve that. But whether it was what they wanted or not, I don't know whether that was the British Empire was actually planned to be ended, because I don't think it was. I don't think the plan was for the British Empire to end at that particular time, because it took a very long time for the British Empire to dismantle. It took close to a century for the entire British Empire to dismantle. I mean, no doubt that they left client states in the place when the people like Robert Mugabe, for example, in Zimbabwe, is a British intelligence asset. The various Taoiseachs of Ireland are in the Bilderberg group, things like that. But
and the Commonwealth is still going.
Exactly, and you also, I mean, the thing about this is, I myself made predictions at the start of the U.S. presidential campaign. I was saying every time Trump's going to die, Trump's going to be, some scandal's going to destroy Trump. Trump is going to be manipulated out by his own party. I said this over and over again. And there are articles up on Japanway Voice, and you can actually see them where I've been saying this. The truth of the matter, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. I mean, I was convinced. I knew from the start. I was looking into it, and I said Trump is a non-establishment candidate. Yeah. And if any conspiracy theorist or fellow conspiracy theorist thinks he is an establishment candidate, then explain to me why you think he is, and what falsify yourself. What in your view would be a non-establishment candidate? You see what I mean? So, and they haven't. They just say, "Oh no, Ben, you're a shill. You're a sheeple." That's all they say. So,
well, there's also the Cliff High school of thought. I don't know if you're familiar with Cliff High.
What's that?
He does the webbot prediction. He's appeared on Mel Fabricus's Veritas Radio a few times. He's also a Bitcoin advocate, but he's a very clever man, actually. You should look him up. It's Cliff with one F, High. He's one person I would recommend because he's a breath of fresh air. He talks about other things, but he talks about two different groups. One he calls the breakaway community, and they tend to be a bunch of wealthy people with business and corporate interests. And then he thinks about the military-industrial complex, the warmongers. And he reckons that these two people are going to be very much in disagreement with each other. For instance, there's all this talk about depopulation. But if you've got two competing entities there, one that wants to, depopulate us, and then you've got another group of people that don't want to depopulate us because they need our industry, who are fighting over us, then that brings it down to a 50-50 chance. And I would say that in this case, the two titans that there are in the world, Donald Trump is probably part of the breakaway community. I think that Richard Branson is also probably part of that as well. And on the other side, you've got the military-industrial people who are more like the control freaks. They're more about hegemony than they are about business sense. And then there's a third lot, the ones I call the watermelons, who are kind of like the cultural Marxists, the UN, people like that. And I call them watermelons because they're green on the outside and red on the inside. Green communists.
Yeah,
so
Jerry E. Smith used to say that. Yeah, he used to Jerry E. That's a good. It's a good. What's the word? Imagery. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so you've got all these different conspirators who are competing against each other, and even Robert Anton Wilson mentioned this as well. It's not one group of people. It's actually many. It's plural, and and also I would even argue that there are more than one sets of pyramidic structures in this world as well. So there are people who are competing for this power, if you like, and there might be one group who are at the top now, but they have been trying to cooperate with each other in a sort of putative peace. But it wouldn't take much for them to become divided amongst each other for the whole divide and rule thing to backfire against them. So I like to, well, I don't know, maybe I'm being naive, but I like to believe that this is their Achilles heel because, we can't despair. I mean, we got this far. History has gone on so much. There have been many, winnings and losings throughout history. And we've got to remember that we're still part of that same history. And we really don't know what's going to happen. There are good forces as well as bad forces in this world working. And my thing is I want to give out empowering, success-based narratives to people because there's too many people with defeatist narratives and too many people with victim narratives at the moment. And
that's true.
It's all in the mind. That's what it all comes down to.
That's absolutely true. And I mean, it's possible that model is accurate. I mean, even David Icke says that there are factions within the powers that be that are rivals within the agenda.
Yeah.
He does say there is a single agenda that encompasses them all, and I think he's right there, or at least I think there's something badly wrong with that at the moment, and maybe it is just all falling apart, which would be great. Yeah. Maybe you're right. Maybe we have reached a point where the actual New World Order agenda is basically disintegrating, and it's the forces for good in this world are becoming more and more apparent. And I mean, this happened with Brexit, and I mean, I did a video. You probably seen my video where I'm lamenting that I think the Remain side are going to win, and in the morning I find out the Brexit side. We talked about this on the previous show, and we get into the point now where it could be that these different factions, the watermelons and the bankers or whatever, all the others, are now at the point where they have maybe not had a word from mission control for some time yet, and so now they're just focusing completely on their own external rivalry.
Yeah,
it's possible.
Well, I mean, it could be. It has got quite bad like that, and I mean, they're going to be susceptible to their own divisions as well because, they're not in some insulated bubble. They're still human. All right, a lot of people, of the mentality that they're shape-shifting reptiles. I'm a little bit skeptical about that one, but they are. I'm more of the thing that it's psychopathic human beings, but they're still going to end up. They're still likely to end up being divided amongst themselves, and for the wheels to fall off their machine. Yeah. Oh, actually, I never mentioned this on my podcast, but I got someone who trolled my when I done my Brexit podcast.
Yeah.
If I could read this out from.
Sure. Yeah, because I've had some hate mail too. Don't worry. So.
Right. So basically this bloke he disagreed with me about my about what I was saying about Brexit and what I was saying about leaving the EU, and he left a couple of comments on both their programs. The first one, he said you went to the Trump side, tusk like that, and then he left me a YouTube video which was like a cartoon which was basically explaining that people who vote for Trump and people who vote for Brexit are old, xenophobic, and didn't go to university, right? And then he left me 3 numbered bullet points, and the next thing that he said, he goes, I detest separatists because they know nothing of teamwork. He goes, when the things get tough, the tough get going. So in the case of the UK, you decided to quit. No one likes a quitter. Then he said, your idea of anarchism is chaos. And then he told me to read Kropotkin, Proudhon, Bakunin and Emma Goldman and learn something, finger-wagging sanctimonious. So I looked them up and I found out they were all influenced by Karl Marx. That's all I needed to know. Then he says, your immigration rant is laughable. It reminds me of what the Germans in the 1930s were worried about.
Oh!
And what I was saying...
Godwin's law.
Exactly. What I was saying about my immigration rant was that Britain has quite easily been able to sustain 30,000 immigrants a year. It's basically improved our cuisine, improved our music, made us quite culturally diverse, made the English less culturally effete, but has not happened at the expense of our British cultural identity. I was arguing that if these numbers went up from 30,000 to 300,000, then we would have a problem. I don't see that Godwin's law applies to that statement.
Yeah, I mean, it's what's the interesting thing about this person is that everything they've said is rhetoric and zero explanation, lots of personal criticism and rhetoric, no real explanation about why they think that. This is like, I think about over 3/4 of the criticism or so-called criticism I get, the antagonistic messages I get, are exactly the same. I get everything from you fat bald cunt to well, you obviously have no idea what you're talking about, and they'll repeat that in several different sentences saying exactly the same thing in different ways, and then they'll just end their comment, and I've got nothing I can actually respond to. So this is just, it's very frustrating. But this I'd love to just have a discussion with someone about why they think I'm wrong. Just tell me why you think I'm wrong.
Yeah, with the language of reason and none of this abuse. Yeah.
Don't attack me. Just say why I'm wrong, because I'll change my mind.
Yeah.
If I've made a mistake, I'd like to know I've made a mistake. But as far as I can see, there is, for what's going on in the world right now. I mean, the explanation what you were talking about earlier on about the different groups within the elite is fascinating, because if a number of rival organisations within a single movement were suddenly cut off from the head office.
Yeah.
What they're doing this is probably what they would do. They would probably move away from their single track and start becoming more chaotic in their relationships with each other.
Yeah.
And as far as Trump, this is, in a sense, this has proven my own prediction wrong from beforehand when I said that Trump is going to go. One way or another, he's going to go within it's going to be next month. No, it's next month. And he keeps marching up the ladder. For someone like him to get where he has got, there must be some really big snafu in the engine room.
Yeah.
This is. I mean, could this be springtime in Narnia? I mean, is this the witch's power fading and Santa Claus is going to come up and the snow's going to melt? I mean,
it could be. I mean, what we've got to remember is that it's not going to be perfect. When Trump gets in, there's still going to be problems. It's still going to be difficult.
Oh yeah.
It's still going to be a massive load of fallout and what have you.
Oh,
but
I would like to point out, just before you go on, sorry, but I'd like to point out, I'm not suggesting that anyone listening to this show goes out and votes for Trump. Okay, I'm not saying he's a good guy who's on our side. I'm not saying that he is a white hat or a white knight or anything like that. I'm just saying that he is simply a man who's not meant to be where he is. If anything, I'd say he's an American nationalist. If anything, I'd say who cares about his country and about his own wealth and his family and his country. He's not anti-New World Order. He just is someone who's not connected, because Hillary is. I mean, she's a member of George Soros. We'll come into George Soros in a minute, but I'll let you carry on now, because I've got a lot more to say on that. But carry on, Niall.
Oh God, I might have lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry, my friend. You were talking about So I just wanted to. But we were talking about the fact that Trump has got where he has got to, and there must be some major, there must be a massive blow.
Yeah, I mean, what it is still going to be difficult. It's not going to be paradise overnight. That's certain. There's going to be, you're still going to upset a few people, and it's still going to be difficult. But at the same time, we have to be open to the possibility that there is going to be some kind of positive change somewhere along the line. One of the things that I kind of look at is that I can't help but respect entrepreneurs. This is the way I am. Anyone who is even like Richard Branson. I know that Richard Branson is pro-Hillary, but that's entirely up to him to think the way he does. But when I think that there's this bloke who used to live in a squat and was running a catalogue shop, and he was using a telephone box outside the squat as his office number as one of his first businesses, and then he became a billionaire later down the line. And Donald Trump, he got £1 million or $1 million off his dad. Anyone who can turn $1 million into $3 billion, they must know what they're doing. Yeah. Absolutely, they must have an idea about business and growth and all of the rest of that. And my argument is that someone who knows how to do a Del Boy successfully within the free market is definitely someone who I would go for. My money would be on them, because if you look at the public sector, the bureaucracy and the bureaucrats and the political classes, none of them are successful business people. They're on a gravy train, most of them. It's all donations and it's all salaries. But give them a chance to build up a business. Most of them wouldn't know what the hell to do, yet they're in control of the finances and the infrastructure of countries. So if I look at it from the perspective of, you've got one of the world's most successful businessmen who's now going to be taking on the largest economy in the world, in the largest decline in the world, it makes perfect sense to me that he would be, if not the right man for the job, then certainly a right man for the job.
Yeah. I mean, I also respect businessmen. I mean, this is where, this is another criticism I have of Marxism. People who are rich are often rich through their own hard work, and people, like you said, a lot of the richest people in the world are not. Some of them have obviously made their money through ill-gotten gains, but a lot of others have done it through creativity and through expertise. And Trump, I think, is one of these. Trump's been doing this his whole life. He is an expert businessman. He's been doing it his whole life. And maybe America needs an actual businessman, not only there are people in America who understand business, but they use it destructively to actually create chaos. I mean, for instance, Gordon Brown, who I think he was originally some top guy in finance. I mean, in 2002 he sold off Britain's gold reserves at a discount price. Now, the only reason anyone would do that is for a deliberate act of financial sabotage. He actually wanted to devastate the British economy. As Chancellor of the Exchequer, he actually sold off half of our gold reserves at less than half price, mostly to India and China.
Yeah. I know. I mean,
no sane person does that.
Well, no one who knows anything about business does that.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what I mean. Politicians are crap business people. They get into the public sector, and the public sector is, it's got nothing to do with business whatsoever. The only means of money that they get is through, the theft of income tax and other taxes. They just legislate and come along and say, right, we're going to bring in this tax and you have to pay it. But that's not the free market. That's not business. And the likes of Donald Trump have made their money through gambling their money in order to make a profit and a return on their investment. He hasn't come along and said, right, I'm taxing you lot. A good example is that New York was a mess. It was like a third world city in the 1970s. And you saw that on that Adam Curtis program.
Yeah, there's a big
streets of New York look like they look worse than India.
It's very interesting, because I honestly had not really heard much about Donald Trump, because he was not internationally famous until recently. But it was fascinating to learn about his background. Yeah.
Well, he bought up a lot of derelict buildings in New York, and then he turned them into luxury hotels. Now, a lot of people would say, why didn't he help the common person? But the fact is they couldn't afford to do what he was doing. But his idea was that if he bought up the derelict buildings, turned them into luxury hotels, he could get the wealth back into New York, and the wealth would then distribute itself to the whole city. Exactly. And it worked.
It does help the common person. That's the point. It brings money. It brings real capital back into the area, and it creates jobs. Whereas the socialist solution is simply to castigate the rich people and blame them for the problems, and then try and tax them to fund social projects, which inevitably spiral out of control, because people with money get poorer and poorer and poorer, and more of them end up in benefits until eventually you run out of other people's money and you go bankrupt again.
Yeah, exactly. And the only people that you end up being rich in socialist regimes are not entrepreneurs; they're oligarchs.
They're the state. They're the agents of the state.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is why you get these Labour Party bureaucrats who there's people who've made a career out of being just petty bureaucrats within the Labour Party. Whether you're in government, in opposition, they always have some place on the gravy train, and they're always there's kind of they're not like the kind of honest and sort of old type socialists like maybe Jeremy Corbyn or Tony Benn, who seem to have some kind of set of principles. They're the cultural Marxist, kind of like snide, nasty, rich, champagne socialist type who spit on the white working class, and they're just looking for victim groups to sort of to exalt in order to make themselves look cool and make more money off them.
It's be quite ironic that the present day socialists that we have at the moment don't actually like poor people.
Oh, they hate them. They hate poor people. I mean, look at the way they turned on us when we voted out out of the European Union. They've dropped the pretense that their contempt for us. They're supposed to hide their contempt for us. But when we voted to leave the European Union, they turned on the working class of Britain, and there was even talk about depriving people of the vote when they reach a certain age, or if they haven't gone to university. They would openly talk. Oh, they have not been to university. They don't know what they're doing, and things like that. And they really showed their true colours. They really did.
Yeah. I mean, university, I mean, I don't get that. I don't get that at all. I've met so many people from university, and they seem to me to be quite stupid, over-specialised in one specific field and absolutely stupid in everything else. It's sort of like, one of my jokes is, I don't know if you've been at that party where you might get a couple of university prats and they decide to start a pro-anti-euthanasia or pro-anti-violence debate in the kitchen and suck everyone into the debate. The type I mean.
Yeah.
Right. I think the best way to win an argument with them is to go get the bread knife and threaten to kill pro-euthanasia because you look unhealthy to me. I'm going to murder you. And then get hold of anti-euthanasia and threaten to skin him alive and then keep him alive because it's wrong to kill him. And then put the knife back in the drawer, walk out, everyone laughs at them, and the debate just fizzles out. And you don't play by their rules.
I must remember that one. I really must remember it. Yeah, I mean, now, one thing I want to bring you onto you is this comes into the media bias again. That they call Donald Trump is portrayed as he's been called Hitler. He's been called I say racist, sexist, and all these other epithets that you always get all the time. I'm surprised no one's called him anti-Semite yet. I mean, I'm sure that's on their list. But again, it's Godwin's law. They have to bring up Hitler, don't they? Now, the thing is, while Trump was being castigated for making a few bawdy remarks about women when he thought he wasn't being recorded and he was in the company of other men, let's look at Hillary Clinton's women's rights record, shall we? Nice. Yes. Now, Kathy Shelton. This is an interesting person because in 1975 she was 12 years old, and she was attacked by a guy called Thomas Taylor. He didn't only rape her; he beat her to within an inch of her life. And to this day, she was permanently injured as a result. Her whole life, she's now 54. She's never had children because of the injuries inflicted on her. Now, Hillary Rodham, she was called in those days. She was a young solicitor, and she defended this guy, Alfred Thomas Taylor. And now you might say, well, he's entitled to no matter what horrific crime he's committed, he's entitled to his day in court, and he needs a lawyer. And that was her job. She was a junior solicitor in the firm. She had to take whatever case they gave her. But I mean, there's a secret recording of Hillary, talking about secret recordings, where she's doing more than just talking about grabbing genitalia. She's talking about this case privately with a colleague, about this case she's done, and she is she's gloating over the fact that she managed to get Taylor a reduced sentence. He did go to jail, but he got less than a year in jail because Clinton was able to block for admission of forensic evidence, things like that. So she made this little girl undergo a grueling court-ordered psychiatric examination when normally that wouldn't be done. That's not normal procedure for that kind of case. And she was gloating, she was laughing about it privately with a colleague, rather than just saying, all right, I did my job and I can't stand defending this man, but I have to do it because it's my job. She's actually glorifying in her achievement.
The fact that she blocked a forensic investigation a bit, I don't know. I mean, a junior solicitor or otherwise, having to defend someone like that, I don't know. I mean, that crosses a line for me personally.
Yes, well, I'm often suspicious of Hillary's connections from a very young age because she knew John Lennon and Yoko Ono. In fact, she had a relationship with Yoko Ono in 1973, it's believed. While John was off shagging May Pang, Hillary got into bed with Yoko Ono, so I hear. So the connections go back a long way. I mean, she's been an elitist for a long, long time. But there's also the fact that her own husband, the conduct of her own husband. Now, we think anyone who's not familiar with conspiracies will think we're going to talk about Monica Lewinsky, aren't we? Well, no, I'm not. I don't give a damn about Monica Lewinsky because Monica Lewinsky was a consenting adult.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned about the 21 other women, at least 21, who have made accusations of sexual impropriety on Bill Clinton, everything from groping and harassment to full rape, which Hillary has actually intervened in and managed to get quashed. She managed to get these investigations shut down.
Yeah. I mean, she seems to have so much blood on her hands, and so. I mean, the list seems to be endless with all of her shenanigans, and the way that the media has been downplaying all of this, and just concentrating on a couple of things here and there that Donald Trump's supposed to have said.
It's such an obvious. Bias is not the word. I mean, it's just so blatant. I mean, Hillary has blood on her hands. She has made. There's a lot of shattered lives as a result of Hillary Clinton and what she's done. We're talking about in Libya, in various other countries around the various oppressive regimes she's supported and she's funded and she's engineered and acted as a diplomat to maintain good relations with various oppressive regimes. There's the various people at home that she's her own legal wranglings and political. There's connections with assassinations of various kinds, suspicious events such as the guy who smothered himself with a pillow apparently a couple of months ago. Who was it? The head of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So Hillary Clinton has shattered a lot of lives, mostly female lives, but also male lives as well. And she's, I mean, the new WikiLeaks scandal, and also you may not have been hearing about this, but the FBI has reopened the case against her.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I've got a feeling the reason is the motivation primarily is because the head of the FBI wants to look like he doesn't want to lose his job when Trump becomes president, basically. I think that's his own personal motivation. But stuff has come out. For instance, the latest revelation is there is proof now that ISIS is a creation of the Western intelligence agencies through Saudi Arabia. The US and Israel have been funneling money through their agencies, through their connections to Saudi Arabia to fund the Islamic State.
Yeah, I mean,
it's their creation. This is why they're so angry that Russia are bombing ISIS.
Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, I don't know 100% if that's true, but it doesn't surprise me, at all. It does seem a bit funny and a bit inconsistent, shall I say, that ISIS don't ever seem to be killing anyone but other apparent Muslims, and they're not making any headway into Israel at all. Yeah. That seems a bit suspicious. Also, the fact that it does seem like a bit of a long game, shall we say. The destabilisation of the Middle East and the flooding of immigrants into Europe seems to me like a bit of a very long, convoluted game. And the fact that political correctness has reared its ugly head to say that you can't even discuss this because it's racist to do so, even if you're not being racist. And there was someone who made the argument that if someone gave you a bowl of M&Ms, 1,000 of them, and there was 2 of them were coated in cyanide, would you risk eating any of them? And in a case like that, the obvious answer would be no. But this is the case that mixed in with a lot of genuine refugees who are really genuinely seeking asylum, there's a very small amount of these sleeper cells. And of course, they're going to have children, they're going to have second and third generation people who are going to be sleeper cells. So we're going to have a future terrorism problem as a result of this. And again, it can be argued that our own Western powers are causing this problem to happen because They want to create the reason, they want to create the bogeyman, and it's all a look the other way strategy. But if it's true that Trump is going to get in, the head of the present empire that we have at the moment is going to switch over from the military-industrial complex to the breakaway community, as Cliff High calls them. And that could change quite a lot of things. He probably would join Russia's side in the war in Syria as well, and unite with Putin and think, right, we're both going to get rid of ISIS, we're not going to get rid of Assad, because he's not going to follow that neocon utopian fantasy of toppling the leader.
Yeah, it's interesting that the neocons, Hillary is now the darling of the neocons. They've all suddenly become Democrats, and
yeah.
But the thing about this, you're right about. I mean, we talked about this in the previous program, I think. But I mean, the whole refugee thing, the whole immigration thing, it's engineered, and the fact is they want as many radicals as possible, and this is why there's this counter-integration problem we've got in Britain and many parts of Europe, where the young second and third generation Pakistani immigrants in Britain, for instance, are far more radical than their parents and grandparents. And the reason is because the government has been funding, and they've been with Saudi money, they've been building mega mosques and deliberately installing hate preachers in them.
Yeah.
Including agents like Anjem Chowdhury, who is an MI5 agent, That's all.
Yeah.
That's virtually provable. He's not in jail now. He's probably in some luxury flat in Dubai.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean it's completely engineered, and
Yeah.
that's sorry.
So I was going to say that, it's exactly true. The first generation Pakistanis were your friendly corner shop owners, and they were very pleasant and good manners, no problem with them whatsoever. But yes, their kids and their grandkids who are going to be susceptible to these influences because they're going to be impressionable, and their sort of like their sense of cultural fragmentation and victimhood is going to be played upon by these zealots that we're, that the and the fact that we have Sharia zones, like in Luton and Walthamstow as well as Molenbeek in Belgium. The fact that we have these Sharia zones, you would think that they would close them down straight away and just flipping throw them in the English Channel, and then immediately side with all the moderate Muslims who don't want to bring Sharia law in, and actually have good diplomatic relations with them. But that doesn't seem to be happening.
No, I mean, well, the Sharia law zones have been set up by this group Al Muhajiroon, which is an MI5 front. I mean, there's no doubt they only ever do anything when they want publicity, and this is what they're doing. But I want to mention George Soros because we're running a bit out of time now. But I want to bring in George Soros. George Soros is a pretty horrible individual. He's one of these big manipulators like Zbigniew Brzezinski or Henry Kissinger.
Yeah.
George Soros is one of Clinton's closest friends. He's a big funder of the Clinton Foundation. He supported Bill Clinton's presidency, and now he's supporting Hillary Clinton's presidency. There's many suspicious things about him. Firstly, because he seems to be the purse strings of Black Lives Matter, which is it's not what it's many of its proponents say it is. It's not. I don't think it is really about rights for black people. I think it's about stirring up trouble. It's a creation of chaos. Because it's not really encouraging black people to be magnanimous and in the way Martin Luther King was in their search for civil rights. It's actually saying you are a victim and you need retribution. You should be resentful and hateful, and you should seek revenge. That's what they're saying. And this is why they are causing riots and things like this. This is what George Soros is one of the people behind this organisation, which they've used a lot of honest black people who may feel, rightly or wrongly, that they have a grievance against their society, and the past or present, and it's harnessing that power and just telling them to hate. It's filling them with a sense of need for retribution, and that's what that does. The effect that has on society is to create rioting and division and conflict between communities who would otherwise get on much better. And also, sorry.
I say that it wouldn't surprise me if the chaos that's been brought about by Black Lives Matter is actually increasing black-on-black crime as well.
It's terrible. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, the quality of life of black people in America has plummeted under President Obama.
Yeah, that's a bit ironic, isn't it?
Because they voted for him because he was a black man, thinking he would be on their side because he's black. He's not. He's a traitor to black people, the same way that Hillary Clinton is a traitor to women.
Yeah, exactly.
The quality of life of black people has gone down, and rather than policemen, I mean, policemen, unfortunately, the police shootings and things like that is a serious issue, and it affects all people. I mean, it affects white people get shot by the police as well as the black people. But the fact of the matter is that when you're living in poverty and your families are breaking down and things like that because of Obama and his policies, then they've got this. Soros is deliberately a part of a person who is in a sense, he's not only patronising black people, he's using black people as in a sense Rottweilers to create the breakdown of society.
Well, I mean, I don't know enough about George Soros, but I do know that he is actually guilty of actually funding a lot of fake revolutions around the world, isn't he? Not just in America, but he's been doing this for decades now. He's been using his money to rile up groups of people to overthrow this government or that government, or to cause some, political and economic instability in countries that basically he wants to get out the way to fast track things so that this kind of new world order elite can just go in and ride roughshod over him. So he's very integral in this.
Well, I mean, he's got this thing called the Open Societies Foundation, which is like a one world government Agenda 21 type organisation, of which Hillary is a big supporter. Hillary has already talked about a hemispherical union or a hemispherical open borders area, which basically is about the breakdown of the nation state, the creation of power blocks, such as in 1984 with the Oceania, the East Asia, Eurasia, and George Soros is behind this organisation. And the funny thing about Soros as well is that there's a bit of another trouble is that Soros is also he's also a colleague of a guy called Mark Malloch Brown. Now, this is someone whose name is not as infamous as it should be. He is CEO of a company called Systematic, and he's a former Labour government minister, and he's held senior positions at the World Bank, the Commonwealth Office. He's Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations in 2006, Deputy with George Soros of the Open Societies Foundation. And guess what Systematic does?
Oh, what?
You'll guess. You'll be kicking yourself for not guessing this, but they build the voting machines for the American election.
Oh yeah, I've heard about this. Yeah, Smartmatic.
Yes, they send they especially. I mean, their particular model is actually being used in all the battleground states, they call them, because these are states which are sort of undecided over which way they're going to go.
I know it's really weird that the UK company is producing voting machines for America, yet we're still using pens and pencils over here.
Yeah,
well,
listen, obviously, I mean, electoral fraud is a possibility wherever you go, as I was saying to you in the last program. But isn't it interesting that these machines are apparently very interesting, because Hillary Clinton swears blind that Russia is going to hack them. But when you ask her,
I bet she's going to blame Russia for her collapse.
But then you think about this. So whenever you ask her, well, is it possible that someone else might hack them to support you? And then she denies it. Don't be such a silly conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is possible to hack these machines. It's possible. Yeah.
All this talk about Russia and cyber attacks, and it's failing miserably. I mean, no one actually really believes this anymore, you know. And this is what's really good. We've come to a point now, Ben, where people are becoming sceptical in droves, and the propaganda is beginning to look so transparent and so unconvincing that every time she opens her mouth, people are just going to laugh at her. The tide appears to be turning when it comes to this sort of stuff.
I'm really glad. I mean, the way it looks now is that, I mean, even if Trump was to have a heart attack now, no one would believe it.
No.
If Hillary wins, then we will know she did it by rigging the ballot. And the thing is, everybody else is going to know as well, because this is broken through the glass ceiling, is now in the mainstream, this idea. The idea that the Systematic machines will be hacked by someone within the Clinton campaign, connected to George Soros, who's a good friend of the man who makes these machines, who's funding Hillary's campaign and wants her in power. We also have this guy, James O'Keefe, who has found distinct evidence of dirty tricks by the Democratic Party campaigners and their contractors, stirring up trouble at Trump rallies deliberately. They pay homeless people, psychiatric patients to invade the arenas and start riots. They admit what they've been doing. They've been fiddling it so some people get to vote twice. Democratic voters get to vote twice. And they've been more than twice sometimes, and they've been taking them around in rented cars to different polling stations. And they've even stolen the identities of dead people.
That's right, dead people,
in order
and
to
also
vote.
people have been voting in more than one state as well. This is another thing that's been happening there. So, yeah, I've heard about that, and also the machines have been flipping the vote. So you vote for Trump, it makes you vote for Hillary.
This is the hacking, but this is this guy Malloch Brown and his machines. This is what they're designed to do.
And then they'll blame Russia, and then of course no one will believe that to be true, because no one believes this. And that's what I say. That time when what's her name, Hillary Clinton went to that 9/11 talk and collapsed, I bet she'd probably blame Russia for making her collapse. I mean, that's ridiculous.
This is it. I mean, of course, she wants war with Russia. This is the thing. This is why she can't be allowed to win. I mean, this is why. This is why it looks. This is why I'm hopeful now, because that was the plan, I think, to have this war with Russia, and it's not happening. It can't happen now. I mean, to be honest, Hillary, I don't see how they can actually get away with fiddling it so Hillary wins now, because, like I say, the polls, people are now all in favour of Trump. And all the dirty tricks they've tried have failed. The only thing, the thing that worries me is there may be some big event might go down that will cancel the election. Some big 9/11 style or worse attack that would cancel the election, which I wouldn't put past them. I wouldn't. I wouldn't
put past them. But I am optimistic at the moment, because there was the Brexit vote, and there was nothing they could do. Even sacrificing Joe Cox, there was nothing that they could do to stop the Brexit. Stop the Leave campaign from winning. And I just see this political tide that is turning at the moment. So it just seems inevitable that Trump will win, and will win by a landslide, because a tide appears to be turning in the Western world. An awakening to, for want of a better cliche, really, that people are finally wising up to stuff. And just like what happened in at the end of the Cold War, Eastern Europe, when you think that one after the other, all these countries stood up to and overthrew the communists, and it appeared to come out of nowhere. I think this is happening here now in the Western world. First with Brexit, then with Trump, and then as a result, there's going to be a chain reaction of things that are going to happen around all the Western countries. And I think what's going to happen is that this is going to lead to a complete, fracturing of the European Union within the next 10 years. And all the things that we've been despairing about, like one world government, transhumanism, microchip population, I honestly think that there's a very good chance now that will stop. Just like in the 80s. And I always like to remind people of the longer now, as I call it. You go back in time to the 1980s, when if we were going to survive the red button, then we weren't going to survive Nostradamus's quatrain. And if we were going to survive Nostradamus's quatrain, we were all going to die of AIDS. And all this has turned out to be just bollocks. And we've got to remember now that a lot of what we might be despairing about might turn out to be future bollocks as well.
That's a good way to put it, because I also think this is where I want to go. I want to be optimistic about this, and I want to believe, and I can actually rationally accept the possibility that this is the beginning of the end for the agenda. For someone like for a non-establishment candidate to actually become president of the United States, or even get to the point where he might become president of the United States, is such an aberration in what we know, what I've learnt about the conspiracy. And I mean, I've been a conspiracy theorist for many years. I've made predictions that have come true. Everything I first came across has been confirmed through experience. Yet therefore, I think I am in a position to notice when something does go wrong with their agenda, and I do really think that maybe, I mean, not even it doesn't matter what kind of guy Trump is. It doesn't matter what his policies are or what he stands for. The fact that he's non-establishment is enough for us to take hope and to celebrate the fact that he has managed to get where he has. And in that case, if that is the case, then we could be looking at springtime in Narnia. It could be the end of the White Witch's reign, figuratively, and this really could be it's not the end. It's not the end of the New World Order, but maybe this is the beginning of the end of the New World Order.
Well, I mean, what will happen is, which unfortunately it swings and roundabouts. Given another 20 years, we'll have another adversary that we'll have to deal with. But this is something that could switch the way the world is going and buy us time. And this is something that keeps on happening throughout history. All throughout history, it's been like this. Big blocks fall, and empires fall, and then something else rises. There's never ever been a time where an empire has lasted forever, totally 100% enslaved the people, brought in full spectrum dominance, and no matter how much they try to talk about full spectrum dominance and an empire lasting forever, history has shown that doesn't happen. There's enough of people out there that collectively have a conscience. That's why, after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, there's never been a nuclear bomb dropped anywhere. And a lot of people forget this. The last time a nuclear bomb, in fact, the first and last time that a nuclear bomb was dropped in the middle of a city was only ever Hiroshima. It could have happened so many times since then and didn't. Yeah. And I honestly think there's enough people out there that know instinctively, intuitively feel that this has to be prevented, and for that reason, I think Hillary's not going to win. So that's my take on it. And maybe I'm being a bit naive and optimistic about it. But if I turn out to be wrong, we'll never ever get to talk about it, Ben, because we'll just be a couple of vaporized shadows against walls.
Yeah, so. All rounded up for the re-education camps. Yeah. It's I agree.
I've got to leave you with a bit of satire though about Hillary Clinton. Yeah. She said that she wanted to have this hemispheric policy, and she was questioned about it, and she said she wanted a hemispheric energy policy. Well, you know what I think that is? The northern hemisphere are going to be breathing in radioactive air. That's about as far as it goes.
Maybe that's what she's saying. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. Like I said before, I think she's the whore of Babylon, basically.
Yeah, true.
But see, I mean, I think that's. I think I like to look on the bright side of things, and I do think after Brexit, and I think my hope has been reignited after Brexit, because I was at the point where I just thought, well, look, if things don't manifestly start to get better soon, I'm going to start thinking, well, will they ever? And Brexit happened. But even like I said, whatever happens now, I mean, like I said, she could rig the election, no one's going to believe it. Trump could die, no one would believe it. I don't think there's anything they can do in this particular base. Even the Democratic Party are now trying to distance themselves from Hillary. Even Brzezinski's turned against her now, which is incredible. This is unbelievable.
My God, Brzezinski's turned against her. Saying something, man.
Yeah, so I think what will happen after that, I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. I'm excited to see where this is going to go. This could be, like I say, the second domino. The Brexit was the first one. Hillary being kicked out when she was the chosen one is the second domino. What's the third domino going to be, Niall? We'll have to find out.
Well, to be honest, I think the third domino might be Deutsche Bank going down.
Oh yeah, I mean maybe that's something I've written about this actually. I mentioned it on this program. Maybe that's something could be a great opportunity for us. Not something to. I mean, obviously it's an engineered crash. I mean, they got a massive fine from the regulators, 11 billion, which is really what pushed them over. But
well, yeah, you see, one of the things that I see that could be good if Deutsche Bank went down. All right, it'll be really horrible for a lot of people, but it will trigger off the old safe haven thing: silver, gold, and Bitcoin. A lot of people will get into Bitcoin as a result of that. A lot of people will also get into what you call it, what am I talking about? Silver and gold as well. I also think that what might help the third domino here is that if Trump does get in power in America, the media in America is going to change. So InfoWars, I mean, whatever you think of Alex Jones, will end up replacing. Yeah, they'll end up replacing CNN, right?
No, that'd be wonderful. That'd be wonderful.
RT will get its credibility back. Max Kaiser and people like him will become more famous. They'll become more to the forefront. It will be revealed what the banksters are like, and this will get more into mass consciousness as more people will talk about it. This will be, I think, the effect of the third domino, and people will be more interested at this point in economic sovereignty as well as national sovereignty.
Yeah, and I hope the conspiracy theorists might. Well, I'd say I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I hope that the mainstream conspiracy culture will understand that their objection to Bitcoin is purely superficial. It's surely a superficial glance. It's not a true analysis of what Bitcoin is.
No,
it's they just say, well, it's electronic money. That means it's part of the control system to create a cashless society, and it's very hard, like I say, to explain sometimes to people who are so shrill and illogical and hysterical exactly what
these people also say the same thing about gold. Oh, it's an imperialist metal and all of this,
And they're the ones who go on about shills all the time. They go around accusing other people of being shills continuously.
Yeah, and also, another thing to bear in mind here is that, like, if people just want cash is still fiat currency. Fiat currency is all at the behest of the people who financially control us.
Exactly.
So, the thing about it is that, like, it doesn't matter what form the money is in. It matters who controls the money. That's what matters more than anything else. And if they were trying to bring in a cashless society which was, completely owned by banks and central banks and governments and people like Visa and SWIFT and all the rest of them were colluding together to create this cashless society, then that would be one thing. The last thing they would do is create an open source protocol that actually gets around trade embargoes, trade sanctions, and actually removes banks altogether from the equation. Why would they do that? It does not make any sense. There is no reasonable or logical explanation for why that would be a conspiracy.
Well, this is very true, Niall. I'll tell you what, whatever this third domino is, I do hope you will come back onto the programme and talk about it again. I'd love to have you back on the programme, and we'll talk about it when it happens. It's exciting times.
Yeah.
I feel thrilled about politics has been more. There's been more excitement in politics in the last 6 months than there has been in my entire lifetime put together.
Yeah.
Before that, it's just wonderful.
It's true. It's the biggest seismic activity since the end of the Cold War.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, even more so, I think, than that. It's incredible because I think the Cold War was planned. It was planned by the Rockefeller. The end of the Cold War was planned by the Rockefeller Institute. But let's tell the listeners about your own radio show, because I mean I know I've been on there too. But what's Shamanic Freedom Radio?
Yeah, but it's shamanicfreedomradio.podomatic.com. I just talk about random stuff, my own unique take on it, without any like specific agenda. I suppose, it's a mixture of unique perspectives, iconoclasm, humour, philosophy, and I don't know. I mean, in recent times, I've been doing back to basics, just talking into the microphone. But in previous times, I've been doing comedy sketches. I had done interviews with people in the past. There's a whole archive of stuff, but I'm not so much doing that anymore. It's just me talking nowadays. But in the past, I've had everyone from Neil Kramer, Neil Sanders, Rupert Sheldrake, all sorts of people that go right back. But nowadays, with the alternative media being so much bigger than me, and there've been so many other people covering so many other things, I've just basically turned it into my own personal audio blog. But it's still, it's still a unique perspective on things that you probably wouldn't find anywhere else. And I'm not scared to be a heretic, even amongst heretics. So.
That's true. I mean, I do recommend Niall's channel. You can get the link. It's on the Hapanwa Radio blog. There's a link, and there'll be a link in the description box in the show notes to this program. And I know that the Mindset community's discovered you, and they're going through your back catalogue as we speak.
Oh, cool.
It's all 135 shows, I believe, now. It's quite a lot. 135 shows.
I've been listening to The Mindset. Who's that? Is it Gareth, the one who lives in California?
Yeah, it's Gareth, me, Joe, and Trevor Reeves. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. What amazes me about him is that he does these brilliant English accents. He's actually British originally, isn't he?
He's a Welshman, yeah, originally.
He does his brilliant Cockney and then Northern accent. Like, Americans can't normally do that, so you can tell he's only merely a naturalised American.
Yeah, he was on this show a couple of programmes ago. And on the subject of being a heretic among heretics, I think you and I are in a competition to see how many friends we can lose, and you're ahead of me at the moment.
Am I? Probably, yeah.
But I mean, who knows? After this show goes out, I might catch up with you.
Yeah, probably. I think this is the thing, because we don't want fair weather friends. We've got to be ruthless, and we've got to separate the wheat from the chaff here, because I'm just concerned that a lot of people who are getting into the alternative media are not actually awake. Most, I'd say a great deal of them are actually just slumbering, and then they're the ones who are the most zealous to shout out, "Wake up!" to all the sheeple, as they call them. Yeah. And a real, true sort of like investigator, thinker, would not tell anyone to wake up. They would let the sleepers sleep until they've had enough sleep, and then they would get the people who are waking up and guide them at their own pace. That's what I think they would do.
Exactly. And seriously, I don't want to fall out with people, but it seems to be inevitable at some point, and because there's a lot of people who just get offended by a dissent, and they don't want to really discuss it with you or just agree to differ. They just want to lay into you when you say something it's too divergent from what they believe, and sometimes they find it offensive and things like that. And I've had several people in the last couple of years have been like that with me, and you just got to let them go. That's all you can do.
Yeah, you've got to be ruthless with people like that. If they're not willing to adapt to the fact that the whole world is in a state of flux, everyone is entitled to see the world the way they want to. No one has to agree. And like I've mentioned many times before, with a lot of the people that are my favourite people, I don't agree with them about everything, but that is what makes the world go round. That is what I'd say the true sense of freedom and democracy is, not the version that they give us, but the true sense of freedom and democracy is, I don't approve of what you do, but I will fight for your right to do it.
Absolutely,
that's the way it should be. And if people are going to fall out with you and get angry with you because you have a different opinion, then I just think disregard these people. They are dictators. It's a good thing they don't have power. They are as bad as the Illuminati that they're supposed to be fighting.
Yeah, that's true. Well, no, it's been great to talk to you again. It's been fascinating having you on this. And thanks for coming on the programme and discussing this historical moment in the political. What could turn out to be, the day everyone will remember. In years to come, people look back and think, God, we were so close to that New World Order, but then that happened, and that was the first real sign that it was crumbling. You never know, Niall. You never know.
Yeah. Well, empires fall, and that's what we've got to remember. This one is presently falling, and like the Titanic was not unsinkable. That's what we've got to remember.
That's right. True. Yeah. Okay. Well, you take care of yourself, and I hope to talk to you again soon. And check out Shamanic Freedom Radio, ladies and gentlemen. Nile Murphy, otherwise known as Opaque Lens. You have a good evening.
Yeah, and you. Cheers, man. Cool.
So I hope you found that interesting. Nile is always interesting to talk to. He's a very clever chap, and I always enjoy having him on the show. And so this is a bit of a tricky situation because it's not like Brexit. I mean, I compared it to Brexit because it's a very similar situation to Brexit in a way, because it appears that something's gone badly wrong with their agenda and something's happened that they did not expect. And I can't participate in it because I'm not American. I don't get a vote. Unlike with Brexit, I don't get the chance. I can't deal with it personally because I'm on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. But I am I'm on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, but it means I can't go down to the town hall and check like I did before and check to see if there's any fraud going on. And because it's electronic voting, it might not be possible to, and I'll say some more about that in a minute. But this is where I disagree with a lot of the conspiracy and people like David Icke, Richie Allen. They've all been saying this. This is just another US election, just another kind of the same fraud of democracy, double establishment choice where you get to choose whichever puppet in the Punch and Judy show you want. All right, that's what they say it is. Now, every other presidential election in my lifetime has been that, but this one is different. I disagree with a lot of the conspiracy here. I think Trump is non-establishment, and if he's non-establishment and he's got to where he is, then something's gone wrong. There's a spanner in the works. There really is. And we've also had the FBI investigating. This is just they announced just a week ago they were reopening the investigation. Now, despite the fact there are headlines everywhere now saying that they didn't complete, there was nothing to investigate, that's not actually true. They've the media spun it out of all recognition because, as I said, they're very biased in favour of Hillary. There's massive media bias in favour of Hillary. So, I think actually, if Hillary Clinton wins, it means she rigged it. This is something I wrote a Panmo Panmo Voice article about. Okay, and I mentioned it in the radio show last Thursday. But have you noticed, whenever opinion polls are published, I know they're false. They're always close. All the opinion polls in major elections I've seen have been very, very close indeed, almost 50-50. The Brexit one was, the Scottish Independent one was, the last general election was, and why is that? And we know they manipulate things, but I think it's because it makes it appear more credible if an unpopular outcome emerges. So for instance, if the polls had been honest, say in Scotland, and they were going to rig the Scottish Independent vote, which I believe they did. I believe they rigged the Scottish independence referendum. Supposing that 70% of Scots wanted independence, and the public opinion polls published that. Now that would be a tricky situation for them because then if they rigged it so that the no vote won, so Scotland remained in the UK, people might get suspicious. This is why there was no exit polls in the Brexit referendum, for the same reason. Now, people are taking this seriously now. We've had proper evidence. Chris Everard has gathered evidence of the Scottish election being rigged. People in the rest of the country have been started to, in a sense, the red pill has dropped. This is why, I said this during my Brexit video, there was the hashtag use pens thing. That was very, very interesting that became so popular, went viral, and people actually were using pens. And some guy was handing pens out at the bloody polling station, and he was arrested by the police. This person has illicit pens with intent to supply. That was the crime. Now with America, you see, it's different. You see, America actually has electronic voting, so pens don't come into it. And this is very, very worrying. Because Hillary's been going on about Russia hacking the voting machines. But if someone says, well, you might do it, that's a conspiracy theory. Yet those machines can be hacked. I mean, I'll tell you something about, and I think Hillary's the person most likely to do it, because there's a company called Systematic. It's a British company which is making voting machines which are being sent to certain states within the Union, which are known as battlegrounds, because they're sort of not. Some are pro-Trump, some are pro-Clinton, but these ones are kind of like wavering. They're called battlegrounds. This is where the propaganda machines of both campaigns are focusing. Now, the CEO of Systematic Computers is a guy called Mark Malloch Brown. Now, he used to be a Labour minister, and he was Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. Oh, what a pedigree! And he is, and he's now in business in this making these electronic devices for Systematic. And now he is also very closely connected with Hillary, because he sits on the board of the Open Frontiers Foundation, run by George Soros, Hillary Clinton's mate. Conflict of interest, the words come here, don't they? Now, there's a guy called James O'Keefe, not to be confused with Ken O'Keefe, who's run something called the Project Veritas, in which he has discovered various attempts to defraud the election and weight it in favour of the Democrats and Hillary Clinton. And there's these people who were going around fiddling it. They are committing electoral fraud, and it's almost like they talk about it in this interview where they say things like they cause trouble at Trump rallies, and they pay the mentally ill and homeless people to go and stir up trouble at Trump rallies and create some of the violence that we've seen at Trump rallies. But they also, it's even worse, they fiddle it so that Democrat voters get to vote more than once, and they even steal the identities of dead people to vote for Hillary Clinton. Now, and they hire cars to drive people around to different polling stations in case they get recognised and things like that. Now, when I was a kid at school, my teacher told me about this situation in this, I think it was a country in Latin America, I think South America, which was ruled by a military junta, but then it bowed to international pressure and allowed free elections. Thing is, so they had the free elections, proper thing, ballot papers and everything. When the voters got to the voting booth with their ballot paper, they found only one name on it, and that one name was the leader of the military junta. And that was an awful situation. What a nightmare! What a fraud! What a con job! But the United States is no better. If the elections are being rigged, then it is no different. It's even worse because it's been done secretly and people don't know about it. Hillary would do it. I'll tell you, she would. She's got some really. I could talk about the things she's done. I talked about some of the things she's done. She's also got some pretty crooked friends. There's this Anthony Weiner guy who's a sexual degenerate. He sends perverted text messages. He sends, erotic text messages to a 15-year-old girl. He's married to someone called Huma Abedin, and Bill Clinton was the best man at their wedding. And she is like collaborating with Hillary over the emails and scandals and things like that. So it's a pretty corrupt situation that's over there. It's hard to know what's going to happen. But I'll tell you what, I was predicting there'd be an American Joe Cox. I was. Now, Joe Cox, of course, I talked about my Brexit video about how his MP was murdered, Joe Cox. And this basically swung the vote very strongly towards Remain. And it was rigged. It was completely rigged. She was murdered by an assassin. It wasn't this Thomas Mayer guy. He's just a Lee Harvey Oswald patsy. It was this assassin. Or some people say that she wasn't murdered at all and she's just moved out of the area and she's living under a fake identity. I can't rule that out. But it's too late for that now. It's the evening before the election. So what can they do? Well, there are a few things they can do. But one of those, I think, is to cancel the election. I think if they're that determined for the establishment candidate to go through, okay, and they can't stop Trump getting in. I mean, for instance, if they can't kill him now, if they kill Trump, it would be so obvious. Same with maybe with election rigging wouldn't work either. So in which case they'd have to cancel the election. Now, how could you cancel an election, a presidential election? Only with a state of emergency, something like a 9/11 or bigger. Now, one of the WikiLeaks things that came out, it says this. It's there's a PDF of a confidential report of a survey carried out for the Clinton Foundation by the Benenson Strategy Group, which appears to be some kind of Tavistock Institute, Rand Corporation style think tank, a psychological brain butchers organisation. Now, Michael Saller of exopolitics.com thinks it's a hoax. It may be a hoax, but it's a very elaborate hoax. Now, the Benenson Strategy Group says this. This is what it says it is. The Benenson Strategy Group is a strategic research consultancy that marries language expertise with innovative research to frame choices so that your brand is the only answer. We advise global corporations, political leaders and institutions in dynamic competitive scenarios. We understand the rhythm and nuances of language and words. We give you the right words to use and much more. We map the competitive landscape so you know where to play and how to win. We give you the messaging framework, the strategic roadmap, so that everyone in your organisation knows why the messaging is powerful and how it will help you achieve the outcomes you want. No, that didn't make any sense to me either. And that's the thing you get about these organisations, these slippery kind of organisations, these various fifth column sort of like advisory council organisations. They have these kinds of these sinister, you go to their about pages and they're always as meaningless as that. Anyway, they wrote a report. And the report is entitled Salvage Problem, and every single page is labelled at the footer. Do not distribute, do not copy. And it says that official polls published on TV and in the newspapers are inaccurate and misleading to the electorate, and they're intended to be so as a mass psychological weapon, as I just said. And they admit the real situation is Trump is well ahead. And they also lament that they know that the electorate know very well about the vote rigging operations. And even the minority of voters who support Hillary do not admire her as an inspiring leader. They're just voting for her out of habit or because they distrust Trump. And the possibility of electoral fraud, as I said, is now in the mainstream. It's broken through the glass ceiling, out of the alternative community. The general public are aware of it. This is what they said, right? Over a quarter of people said that the election rules should be changed to take into account of the risk. And 22% said that officials from Russia should monitor the process. Bloody hell. Then there's some really creepy stuff. Because it says that the election itself should be interfered with to discourage Trump-supporting demographics from voting at all. And they polled people about what would stop you voting, stop you going out and voting. And there's everything really basically from long queues to a biblical apocalypse. But they said the most likely scenario on a practical level that would keep people at home, people who would vote for Trump at home, would be an attack by extraterrestrials. 38% of Trump voters said they would not go out to vote if there was an attack by extraterrestrials. Independence Day style. We've just had a new Independence Day movie out, oddly enough. So the Benenson Strategy Group recommended what they call fire sign. Now I've not heard of this before, but it seems to be very similar to Project Bluebeam. It creates holographic images in the sky. It's been developed by NASA, by the US Department of Defense, and apparently it's been tested in the Levant, which is Iraq. It displays 3D religious icons or anything else you want on a layer of sodium vapor in the upper atmosphere. And its imaging can cover hundreds or even thousands of square miles. And they recommend the use in this case to create a fake alien invasion that could be staged to scupper the election and allow President Obama to declare a state of emergency and then hand the torch over to Clinton to provide basic continuity of government. Temporarily, of course. they said that this is what they said, right? The article says this, right? In the aftermath of the fake alien invasion, they say the psychological subjugation. Stating the need for the psychological subjugation of areas where uprisings are most likely to occur. The induced trauma of fireside will provide ample cover to government and NGOs who will be providing aid, quote unquote, psychotropic induction of docility and counselling services which will ensure further domestication. And I can guess what these counselling services involve. And this is bloody sinister. If this is real, it's sinister, and it's going to happen within the next few hours. It has to. It has to happen. It has to happen tonight or tomorrow. I mean, it's just coming up to 9. It's about coming up 8:30 here in England. I've been plotting the times in parts of the United States, and here we see it is. This is the world clock. This is Washington DC time. It's 4 p.m. In Dallas, Texas, it's 3. There's 4 time zones in America. In Denver, Colorado, it's 2. And in Los Angeles, California, it's 1. That's where Gareth Davis of the Mindset podcast lives. So it has to happen soon. It has to happen very soon. It could even be happening while I'm recording this, which is why I'm. So if this video sounds a bit rushed, it's because I want to get it out. Now I believe, and I've spoken about this in previous videos, I believe there was a plan to stage a fake alien invasion during the London Olympics, either the opening ceremony or the closing ceremony. That attack was aborted because too many people were expecting it, because false flag terrorism has to come out of the blue. It has to shock and awe the populace by being a surprise. If too many people are expecting it, it won't work. So I'm hoping that by getting the word out about this, I can stop it happening again. Because if they're that desperate, they will do it. I swear they will do it. I think they will. I don't put it past them at all. So, what will happen? That's the question. Now, supposing I'm going to go through a number of different scenarios. Supposing Hillary wins. Okay. If she does, it'll be a bit of an anticlimactic victory because enthusiasm for her... oh, this cough would go away, I really do. Enthusiasm for Hillary is really low. Even people who support, like I say, they're just like very, very half-hearted. They tend to be a bunch of miserable bastards who are just terrified and scared, and they just don't like Trump. So if Hillary wins, it's going to be a very anticlimactic victory. There's not going to be much in the way of celebration, even for the people who support her. If Hillary wins, well, I'll say more about this in the future, but I'll say more about it probably because I'll do another video tomorrow or the day after when I know the result. But Hillary wants a no-fly zone over Syria because Russia are bombing ISIS, and because Hillary and the US government have helped create ISIS by channeling money through Qatar and Saudi Arabia. This is provable. It's in the leaked emails. Basically, the Russians are destroying their asset. They don't give a damn in America how many heads get lopped off by ISIS, because ISIS is a creation of theirs, serving a political purpose. So Russia's been bombing ISIS. America's pissed off. Hillary's going to put a no-fly zone over Syria, which means there's going to be a confrontation with Russia. Now, Russia is not Afghanistan and Iraq. Russia can fight back. Russia will devastate the United States. Hillary will be alright because she has an underground bunker. This may be even part of the plan for the New World Order, to just devastate the world with nuclear war, and then they'll rebuild the New World Order from that. Maybe that's how desperate they are. But this is what it could come to, war with Russia. There was an interview with a general from the US military, and he was like really scared, just saying, we're going to have a confrontation with Russia. We don't want that. We can't. Russia will if it comes to nuclear exchange, Russia will fire missiles at the United States. The United States will be completely destroyed, and most people in it killed who are not in their underground bunkers. Trump, on the other hand, wants to build bridges with President Putin. He wants to join with him in defeating ISIS. I mean, this is why I can't believe if Trump is still alive. If they were going to kill him, they could have done it before. But and I mean, really, in a fair election, Trump would get it hands down. There's a massive connection between, there's a massive chasm between the everyday lives of people and what the media is saying. I mean, the enthusiasm for Trump is enormous. He speaks to sell-out crowds. I mean, Mike Pence, his vice president, did a speech at a place and in a theatre, and over 3,000 people turned up to see him, and they were queuing outside when they couldn't get in. Tim Kaine, Hillary's running mate, spoke in Florida, and 36 people turned up. That's a poor turnout for my own zombie lecture. And he cancelled the news. He cancelled the press conference because he didn't want the journalists to see how few people were coming to see him. I mean, so it'll be very, very anticlimactic, and there'll be a lot of fear if Hillary wins. If Trump wins, well, this is, like I say, I'm different. The two establishment puppets, two controlled clones. Trump is an aberration. His campaign is mostly self-financed, which means, well, as Hillary gets her money from all kinds of interested parties. George Soros, the Rothschilds, the Saudi royal family. The media's on her side completely. She has massive donations. Trump, like I say, is worth $3.7 billion. He can fund his own campaign. And Trump's propaganda machine is mostly independent and decentralised. It's centred on social media and word of mouth. Well, Clinton has the CNN, ABC, Fox, they're all behind her. There's such obvious bias, it's palpable. The BBC is totally pro-Hillary. It's incredible. Hillary, as I said, is the darling of the neoconservative movement and the Israel lobby, if those are not merely synonyms. But Trump has angrily, he's rejected them. He actually spoke to AIPAC and he says, what's it like to have a bloke on your platform who you can't buy? And the Zionists hate him. Everyone from the heads of think tanks like the Henry Jackson Society, just the odd bloggers. Now lots of New World Order researchers are saying, well, Ben, you know, this is just another deeper layer of the control, of the mind control, of the propaganda. That's to convince people that Trump is non-establishment and is our saviour. I mean, they say, you think Trump's your saviour, don't you? I mean, this is crazy. It's saying that if anyone tries to tell me that I think Trump's a saviour, that's simply not true. It's simply rubbish. I'm just gonna plug the camera in one moment. Battery's running a bit low. As I was saying, most people in the conspiracy theory world say that Trump is controlled as well. It's just a lot more subtle and a lot deeper this time. And I've fallen for it. Yeah, they say, you think Trump is your saviour? No. And if you think that, Ben, you're a shill and a sheeple for swallowing it. I'm not going to say why you're a shill and a sheeple. I'm just going to call you a shill and a sheeple in a very loud voice. But I'd like to ask those people a couple of things. Right? If you think Trump is not anti-establishment, because I think he's anti-establishment, I put forward a logical reason why I think Trump is non-establishment, okay? Not anti-establishment, non-establishment. If you think that's not correct, then in your view, what would a non-establishment candidate look like if the existing evidence for Trump being one is not enough? It seems like you guys your position is pretty much unfalsifiable, and it's, as I was saying to Nile, it's like there's no way out. It's a no-win situation. And secondly, I don't think Trump is our saviour. I don't think he's a good guy. I don't think he's a white hat. I don't think he plans to expose the New World Order agenda. I'm just saying he's not owned by the globalists. He's become a presidential candidate and he's not meant to be there. Okay, that's all I'm saying. And that means something's gone wrong. It's gone wrong with their machinations. That's encouraging. Doesn't matter who the candidate. It doesn't matter if he's not. It doesn't matter if he's not on our side. It's just the fact that he's not one of them. He's encouraging. Doesn't matter what he stands for. I mean, the kindest thing I can say about Donald Trump is he is a rather blinkered and naive American nationalist. But that's more than what the rest of them are. He's not a crook, he's not a criminal. He's not a globalist. He doesn't want some kind of Hillary's hemispherical alliance, which is basically... Hillary's, what she calls a hemispherical alliance, is basically a European Union-style superstate for North and South America. An expansion of NAFTA. So what options do they have now? See, if they kill Trump, that he has a heart attack or a plane crash, it's too late for that. It's too late for a Joe Cox as well. They could rig the election using the methods I've told you about. The dirty tricks we already know is possible, and there's even evidence to say it's going on. And I think because Trump is so obviously more popular than Hillary, and he's got twice or 3 times the number of followers on social media as Hillary Clinton. He gets 10 times the number of people turning up at the rallies where he's speaking. It's pretty obvious he is the most popular candidate. In a fair system, he would easily become president. It would be a landslide victory. If he doesn't, then we should be suspicious, based on the other evidence I've said. And I think a lot of other people are going to be suspicious too. This will raise the question of electoral fraud. Another alternative is what I've talked about earlier, about cancelling the election with a massive, huge national state of emergency. That is a possibility too. Alternatively, they may just simply give up and let Trump have it. Let Trump have it and then see if they can just simply contain him as the president and just work around him. That's another possibility. There'll be a huge damage limitation exercise for them, but it may be the only thing they can do. So as I was saying to Nile, is this springtime in Narnia? And if you don't understand that reference, then you need to read the book The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis, which is a children's book, but it's very, very deep and very, very emotionally intense for such a... very complicated for a children's book. It's very good indeed, worth reading. And you'll know what I mean by springtime in Narnia. So, in conclusion, and I want to make this very clear, in no way do I want to formally advise any of my American viewers to go and vote for Donald Trump or to not vote for him, or to vote for Hillary Clinton or to not vote for her. Okay, I'm not formally advising you of that at all. I'm just simply saying, go through what I've said and make up your own minds. It's that simple. I do feel something is hanging in the balance here. It's difficult for me to understand right now, but it is true that if Hillary wins tomorrow, that's not the end of it. Okay? It doesn't mean all hope is gone that she's the establishment candidate. I think if she wins, her grip on power is going to be very tenuous. As I said, it's going to be a big anticlimax, and her position is going to be very, very difficult to maintain, to sustain. Then again, if Trump wins, it doesn't mean everything's going to be wonderful. Trump may well turn out, once he's got over the barrier of the election, he may turn out to be another... He may suddenly decide to collaborate a bit more than he is now, and a lot of the flannel he's given, even though it sounds sincere, and I do believe he does appear to be sincere compared to other politicians, it'll still look as if he will still just sort of like become much more opportunistic, like Syriza did in Greece. Once they got into power, they abandoned their principles and they just became another kind of party. That's a possibility too. Either way, it's exciting. I think, as I said, this is like Brexit. This is like Brexit all over again, where politics has suddenly become worth following and worth being involved in. And I've never said that before, really, and really in the last 6 months, there's been more excitement in politics than there has been in the rest of my life put together. And I'm keen to find out what happens. Of course, I will keep you guys informed, Panmo TV viewers. There will be another video, if all goes well, if the fake alien invasion doesn't go down, and there's no nuclear war on the first day after the election, etc., etc., etc. You know, oh my goodness, I'm optimistic, aren't I? I'm a right bundle of laughs. Yes, great dinner table conversation I make, I really do. So, until after the election, thank you for watching. There will be another film on this subject when I know more. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order.
you.